This is the Cardinal Cowboy Show.
Giddy up! Woo!
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live in the Cardinal Cowboys studio. Hey, man, we've got an exciting show tonight. We're going to talk about some fun. How many people are ready for the end of 2020? I'd say that might be a few people. Okay, it's been an exciting year. In studio, former Lieutenant Governor of the state of Missouri for the Democratic Party, Greg Upchurch, business owner, the Grand Opry House.
Grand Opera House.
I say Opry all the time.
Gets it all the time. But this is a good point. It's the Grand Opera House.
Half the time I say this every time. So, well, let's talk about it in this little crazy world we're living in here and the excitement thereof. I see our cameras. I'm going to do some adjustments to those as you get to talk a little bit about what we got going on here, Greg. But it's been a crazy year. We're going to talk a little bit about the election and our upcoming president,
yes,
who will be reelected or replaced. We're not sure which at this point. Some people think it's a done deal. Some people think. I just watched a guy the other day. We'll talk about it. Who said 80 to 90% chance that Trump's going to be reelected.
I don't think there's any chance Trump's going to get reelected. The American people have spoken. The Electoral College has spoken, and there's just too many people on board. This is done. This is a done deal. Greg says. It's a done deal. We shall see Biden real soon. You know.
Well, it will be interesting. I'm going to go ahead and I've got we got to go camera 4 on you. Tell us, Greg, why you're so confident in that fact. Tell us.
Just exactly what I stated. The vote has come in. People have voted. We have the totals of the votes by state. We have the Electoral College has already cast their votes, and this is how we elect presidents. When the Electoral College speaks, it's done. And until we get rid of that system, that's the system we have right now. So this is how it's working. Is this now my camera? There you go. So this is now how it's working, and it's how it's always worked. And so until we change something, this is how it's going to work. So we shall see Biden very soon as the president with Harris right behind him, and we'll see how it works out. I will make no predictions about their presidency and vice presidency. That remains to be seen, the same as I didn't make predictions about Trump's presidency. I didn't vote for him, but I was interested as everyone else to see what would happen. And now we know. So the people have spoken. We're going to have a new direction here soon with a different president, and we'll see how it works out, either good or bad. No predictions on that point.
Okay, well, you made your point there, and I guess a lot of people, they would agree with you that it is a done deal. A lot of that, I would argue, has to do with who you listen to. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
You got your pundits on the left that say one thing, you got your pundits on the right that say another thing. So then it's a matter of whose facts, whose perspective you want to take, who do you want to listen to, who do you want to believe. And, boy, the gamut is still out there. It's interesting because you and I have talked a little bit about mainstream versus what the underculture, the alternative world out there of people who are talking about things from a different perspective, where they think and they propose and they have facts that they espouse that are very different than what they talk about in the mainstream. And they talk about the SCOTUS and the appellate stuff, and then the different. You've got different clerks and secretaries of state and governors, so what about this challenge, and why is this not being looked at, and these votes, and so Greg, talk about it. Where are we going to end up with this with regard to is it really over? Are you so confident like none of this is even going to emerge anymore, or is it there's still some discussion potentially to be had out there about we need to look at these things, but they're not going to come through?
We can listen to people pontificate about this all day long, just as you're going to listen to us do this right now. And we do come from different sides, although we agree on a lot of stuff. And we agree on a lot more than we disagree on, but there are certain things we absolutely disagree on. So hosts out there, it's not even hosts anymore. It's just everybody can have a blog. Everybody can have access to anyone they want, basically. Put the information out there. If people want to listen to it, fine. Used to be, we had 3 major networks. I know some younger people are watching this, but the older people remember we had 3 major networks. And if you put a newscaster on the network and they told a fib, they got kicked off the network. So, but now anybody can put anything out there, whether it's true or not, there are no checks by the networks anymore that do this. Even the major networks have started to get skewed a little bit, and you have a lot of people out there just, telling it not exactly how it is, just telling people what they want to hear. And it's not good for us, I don't think. I think we need facts that come out in factual form. Now, yes, we have a lot of investigating to do, but that's a whole nother issue that we were already going to talk about. So right now, it's just a matter of the people have spoken, the Electoral College has spoken, and now we have people like Mitch McConnell stepping up, saying, congratulating Biden, congratulating them on their win, and people, leaders from around the world calling and congratulating them. I don't think people would do that if they didn't think it was a done deal.
Okay, well, and that's a strong perspective from somebody who's been a lifelong Democrat. Am I right?
Yes.
And ran for government office a number of times as a Democrat.
Yes.
And has served as such, emphasizing your beliefs in what the Democrats typically. And I think a good point for us to kind of espouse, if you will, is that neither one of us is way off to the far left or far right with regard to our personal beliefs. We're that's what the emphasis of this show that we want to talk about is the fact that most people find somewhere in the middle, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And there's a lot of overlap. There's just some of the extremes that you end up with on either side or the other that kind of get off the charts, and that's where you start losing people. And I wanted to continue to show people and demonstrate and talk about the fact that, yes, there's a lot of overlap. We're a lot closer. We both have, people have heard me make this argument before, everybody's got 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, 2 eyes. There's a lot more similar about us than there is difference. Just a matter of then what are the actual strategies, what are the philosophies you have that are going to help all of us humans together, because we are very similar, but we also want to have our own freedoms to do what we like, and not espousing or stepping on the rights of others. Right. So where are we at with our culture right now, Greg, and where do you think this is going to lead us with this upcoming next 4 years, whether it's Biden or it's Trump? Things are going to be different.
Things are going to be different.
COVID has had a major impact.
COVID's had a major.
Give us some of your thoughts on some of that.
Even business alone. My business is basically closed. So mine's a place that people gather inside. So that's just not what is recommended right now. I keep my mask around me at all times. This is just how it is. We protect each other. We get rid of this thing, and if we can keep this thing from mutating, that's the big one. So, but this is not a COVID discussion. This is more of a COVID did change the world, right? And it's going to keep changing the world if we don't tackle this thing. And so it's affecting everyone. And some people a lot worse than others. I'm okay. I'm getting by. I knew what was, I knew the consequences. I knew what was happening. So I'll be okay. But I know other people are hurting really, really bad. So I feel for them. And this is part of being in the middle and all being together. If we could all just work together to get through this together, we're all going to come out of it better on the other side. Because again, Carter talks about the middle, and I've talked about the middle ever since I've ever run for office. I believe we all operate in the middle. If you watch any of the other shows I've been on, I talk about the middle a lot. So I appreciate that Carter brought this up, because we talk about this, even though we have our differences of opinion. And one thing he brought up earlier, too, about the FARs, that's kind of, part of that's some of the problem we have, because nobody's fact-checking these people on both sides. And I'm not saying it's one side or the other. It's both sides. So if we could get some fact-checking and some way to, I don't want to censor them because we have freedom of speech. That's not right. But if you could have somebody just coming along and saying, hey, what you're saying, we understand your concept, but it's not true and it's not a fact. It's your opinion, so please state, this is my opinion. That would be great, because we're getting a lot of this from both sides, and I don't agree with it. We all operate in the middle. We should all kind of be working toward a better tomorrow for everyone. That's what I firmly believe. So I've always believed that since I was a little kid. I always wanted things to be a little more even than not even with people. I got some stories from when I was a kid I can tell you, but we're not going to get into that.
Well, let's dive into it a little deeper, and I make the argument that most people do realize that this election was very close. It depends on, 6 states, 7 states, depending which ones you want to count in terms of the swing states, and what was going on within those states, how close they were. Boy, you get into the discussion about, we all go to bed November 3rd, Tuesday, November 3rd, and it looks like, okay, things are in shape. Trump's leading in most of the swing states. The overall electoral college is kind of even, but the swing states going towards Trump would push it as an election won by Trump. But we got to wait for the final votes. There's a lot of mail-in ballots, and next thing we wake up, and everything is switched over.
Okay, first, wait a second. That was not a mail-in ballot issue. What happened was the person putting the numbers in the system, when the numbers, Trump's numbers went in and Biden's number went in as a 0. And when they caught it, they put the numbers that were already in progress. They were already there. They just, when they were entering, there was a clerical error. A 0 went in instead of the actual numbers. So everybody went to bed thinking one thing. Yes, they woke up, but now we know exactly what happened and why. So just, that one's easy to research.
Well, that's what they speculate. That's one version of the facts that they say how the data was entered. There was the alternative sources have mentioned or brought up the fact that they believe there were truckloads, and they've made memes about this now that were actually pretty funny.
Some
truckloads,
of the memes are funny.
Truckloads by emergency ballots for Trump, or for Biden, and they just show these guys carting off boxes of ballots that they had to produce. Now, Greg, how do you explain these late night dumps? Was it just strictly they hadn't entered the numbers yet, and they said, "Oh, by the way, we just have
it happened.
We're down by
it happened in the one state." And we know how it happened.
In Pennsylvania, right? We're down by 700,000 votes. Conveniently, we just got 780,000 ballots submitted here that we didn't realize hadn't been counted at 4 o'clock in the morning when no one else was around to see what was going on. I mean,
and one other thing too. Earlier you said the vote was close. The vote was not close. The popular vote, he won by many millions.
That's interesting because it's very interesting that Democrats often bring up the popular vote because
even the Electoral College was won by the same landslide Trump won by last time.
Oh, we're going to have some fun.
He claims his landslide, but when Biden beats him by the exact same amount, that's not a landslide. It's a travesty. So, come on.
Well,
easy to research all this stuff.
Yeah, and that's where you get back into whose facts do you listen to, whose facts do you believe, because a lot of people believe that there has been some absolutely major and proven fraud. It's just a matter of now, is it going to be allowed to be submitted? And it's interesting because why are the courts so reluctant to address this? And it seems as though while there's plenty of evidence and it leans definitely one way, but the judges keep throwing stuff out. Now they are down to the point where, and this is where we'll talk about, as a matter of where we're kind of at right now, there are still a couple final challenges available to Trump, and it gets down to, there's, as I understand, Arizona and Georgia are in the midst of a discussion, at least, to unsubmit their electoral votes, to decertify the electoral votes.
Yeah, Georgia's doing a big thing right now. They took a cross sampling of all of the ballots that were with the hand signatures, the mail-ins, and they're taking a cross sampling to see if there's any discrepancy through the cross sampling. They're doing like 15% or 10% or something like that, and just to see if they find discrepancies, they can go back but if they don't find discrepancies in a sampling, it doesn't exist.
Well, and that's where we're gonna have quite a bit of discussion about it, because if you decertify, Arizona, I believe, is 11. I believe Georgia is 16 or 17, and then you got Pennsylvania 20. There's not enough for either candidate to hit the 270 required electoral votes. So now I've heard discussion two different ways. One is that if the vice president runs the Senate, who tallies the finals for the votes, and the argument is then that if neither candidate has the 270, the winner becomes whoever has the most votes. I've also heard then, because that was a new one, I was like, I didn't think it's either you get 270 or, and this is the alternative to talk about, the vote goes back to the states at the legislative level, and the local legislative governments for each state then cast one vote. And so then it depends on if they're majority Republican or majority Democrat, they all get to vote. And if they've got 32 Republicans and 26 Democrats, if they all stick by their party line, then that vote would naturally go with 32. Then that one vote would go to the Republicans. And in the current setup here, where we're sitting right now with the current United States, 50 states, there would be around 30 legislatures are leaning Republican. They said between 26 and 30. I'm like, how's that arbitrary? Either there's 26, and I guess there's some independents in there, and the numbers might be kind of close. But it would lean then. It would absolutely go to Trump. So that's how they're saying right now. It's a matter of Trump pushes this through to where they get these decertified. They don't get the 270 electoral votes. It does go to the states' senates or legislatures, and therefore Trump will be reelected. What are your thoughts about that? Have you heard that path?
That's
Greg?
a big old maze, and it's a very long path, and I don't see any way forward. And all these lawsuits have been thrown out by these judges because they've been mostly poorly written, not thought out. And judges don't want to deal with that. They want concise. This is why we're doing this. Now, there are a couple lawsuits still out there. We know they are. And again, all of this stuff is researchable. Even what Carter said, it's not who has the most votes. He knew that. It goes back to a process, and that's what he started talking about. Easy to research. Go through and just find the information. It's super easy. But we're going to still discuss some of these things, because this is the stuff that, between us, these are the things we think that you should go look at. And again, view multiple sources. Don't just go, listen to this or listen to that. I mean, listen to both sides. I tend to listen to news from a lot of different sources. A lot of foreign sources, actually. I like BBC and I like NHK. I lived in Japan for a while, And so I like to listen to Fox. I listen to NBC. These are the things I do. I go out and I try to hit the extremes too. I mean, I'll turn on Rush Limbaugh driving down the road in my car. I want to know what he's thinking. I don't agree with hardly anything he says, but I still want to know what he's thinking. But every once in a while, he makes a really good point that sticks with me. Like, you got a good point, man. So don't be afraid to listen to the other side, even if you don't agree with it. How are you going to know what the other side's thinking if you don't listen to what they're listening to? So educate yourself on both sides so that you can make a proper decision. And I'm one of those people, I say vote. I think everybody should vote, no matter what. I think it should be required that everyone in this country vote. And that way we know what people think. Again, things I've talked about all through the campaign, all through everything else. This is where we should be. I think we should be more in tune to making sure everyone in this country votes than anything else. And there are ways to track all this. I know people say, this, that. We're trying to make it easy for people to vote so they actually will. Because I'm one of those people, I don't want 10% of this country deciding who runs this country. And then 90% of everybody else griping about it the rest of the 3.5, 4 years until they get another election, and then they don't vote again anyway. That one drives me absolutely nuts. So if we could change that, maybe it's part of my master's. Public administration is what I've studied all through I've always known government was something I was super interested in, and I like fairness. So hence why I wanted to be in office. But hey, that day will come or it won't. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Well, some points you make there, and I would argue that is definitely the way I think our country is best represented is if everyone gets out and vote. There's a lot of people who just don't want to take the time. Right. So they'd say, let's get into the discussion a little bit, if you will, about mail-in ballots. This is the first time where they've had such an increase in mail-in ballots. COVID, obviously, an impact with regard to why that was so heavily weighted this time. Does that disenfranchise those who feel like there should be, at least you have some, you shouldn't just make it so easy or potentially so easily, potentially fraudulent that they just send masses of ballots. My mom received multiple inquiry ballots sent to her house to vote. I guess she could potentially vote multiple times. Why is there?
You can only vote once.
But why is there such an influx?
Multiple times.
The argument is, if somebody finds it important enough to get up and vote, they should have enough motivation to go to a polling place and submit that live and in person. Not only, but a large reason because then they can prove who they are. They do show that it's just not like, flipping on the TV, I don't even know what the issues are. I'll just send in a ballot. I don't even understand what I'm voting for. I mean, the argument used to be that you had to have ownership of some kind of property before you could vote because then you had a stake in what was going to happen.
That was disenfranchising people all over this country, and it was a good thing it changed.
But do you think that ballots is mail-in voting the way of the future? Should we require some kind of identification?
Okay.
Proof? I mean, here we
Good
get into
point.
discussion,
No, this is a good point.
and this is
So-
where people are fraudulently, potentially, or more easily submitting their votes, and it's not being tracked.
Let's take one very Republican state as an example. Let's look at Utah. Utah has been voting by mail successfully, and no one has said a word about it until all of a sudden there's a chance that this might be a fraudulent election. So now mail-in ballots are the worst thing ever. But Utah has been doing this for years very, very successfully. This is how most Utahns vote. So they've been doing it a long time, and they're a Republican state. So now all of a sudden that Trump's losing, there has to be a problem with mail-in voting. Come on, people, see the problems coming on here? This is what's going on. People are throwing up red flags over things that there shouldn't be red flags thrown up about. Yes, we should investigate. Yes, we should look into. Yes, we should clarify. I like I've got all kinds of different ideas about people voting, but that's just my ideas. I personally think we should pay people. Everybody get a $25 check if you go vote. And then you talk about being able to track. I talked about this last time. You talk about being able to track. You take that $25, and then if they cash their check, that signature on that ballot better match that signature on that check they signed. That's an easy way to check. And if they don't cash their check, well, then that's even more of a reason to go looking for them. Why didn't you cash that $25 check we gave you? So simple ways to track and make this really easy. But, nobody's going to want to agree to, I don't know, a lot of people I talk to say it's a great idea. But, other people on the other side say, well, we can't just give people money to go vote. Why not? It's a motivator.
Well, I would say once you start getting into the position where you're paying people to vote, then your democracy's over, right? You can whoever's got the most money can say, hey, I want to. I'm
this
voting.
is a government issued check one time to everyone, and there is no tracking of who you vote for. Everyone gets it.
But my argument would still be then, where does the money come from within the government? Which party favors the government more in our lives than the other? I mean, as soon as you've got government issuing checks, I don't think I've ever heard this idea before. And to me, it would be off the wall for somebody to imagine that because they...
Wait. It's wrong for the government to issue checks. They issue checks every day.
As a matter of an incentive to vote, yeah. I mean, because then if I was a Democrat and I'd say, hey, man, if I can start issuing checks from the government and I'm the party that represents more government, yeah, that's a great idea for me.
Once every 4 years in a presidential election.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter who's in office. It's not because Trump's in office he gets to issue. No. This is a standard thing that's across the board. It doesn't matter who's in office. If you go vote, it's registered your vote. It's registered that you are registered that you actually voted. Your $25 check comes in the mail. As soon as you cash it, you write your name on it, you sign it. If those signatures don't match, boom, got it. Easy. There's your check and balance.
Well, to me, it would be another level of fraud, control, conspiracy, government inundating our lives if we were to go the route of saying, let's pay people to actually have the perspective on voting. There's no way you could justify that in my mind that would do anything other than cause much, much larger problems for our culture. Let's talk a little bit more about...
This is one of those places we disagree.
And to me, that kind of blows my mind that somebody could even suggest such a policy. But I guess anything's possible in America.
If you think it through,
in America.
What a check and balance. What a check. If you really want clarity,
here is your check to show up. You prove that you voted, and now you get...
You prove you voted, and now you get a check in the mail to cover your expenses of going to vote.
And that's a totally... Wow.
Lots of people can't get to the polling places. They have to take a cab. They have to take an Uber. They have to take a bus. They have to pay somebody else gas to get them there.
So the requirement is that when they vote, they have to vote in person then. They couldn't just mail it in. Here's your check for mailing in.
Now, here's problems, and we can discuss this later,
right? So now we're talking.
There you go. If you can do that, if you want to do it that way, I'm not saying it's a perfect system. There will be things that need to be talked about. But again, my point is, if you want the system to work, even if it mail in, if you sign your ballot, you sign your envelope, then you get your check in the mail and you sign your check, as long as the signatures all match, that's what matters. That's the whole part about this mail-in voting.
Signatures matching. Okay, well, that's what I wanted to get back into a little bit of discussion, because it did come down to 6 swing states that were literally the states that they knew. Now, did you find it a bit ironic? Until you really dig into this, the mainstream media, I talk to people, say, if you're going to listen to mainstream, all you're going to hear is essentially what the Democrats are proposing, I believe, and because they own the mainstream, many people on the right argue, and that is, the election's over, there's nothing to see here, we've got a huge increase in COVID cases. Not many people are actually dying from it, but we want to scare the hell out of people. We want to have many people concerned with.
A lot of people died, man.
Well, and when you look at the numbers statistically, yes, no death, but there are a lot of people die from a lot of diseases and other issues.
People died.
But when you really break it down percentage-wise, the mortality rate is so low. It matches or is even lower than the flu. And so why don't we treat the flu the same way? Why don't we?
Actually not. You are wrong about that. Do the research.
Not at all, actually. But
do the research.
You'd have to. Then it's again, that's why I say to you, Greg, whose numbers are you going to look at? Your numbers.
Look at 10 different places, and 8 of them will say it's wrong.
The CDC's numbers. I mean, when you really get into it. But let's talk about. Here we are. We've got the mainstream media jamming down our throats one side. Why isn't the media supposed to be unbiased? Aren't they supposed to present both sides? But you will never hear from them anything other than COVID is crazy and Biden has already won. And the truth is, they still haven't certified. The final electoral votes have not been actually finalized. That's where you're going to get into this discussion we touched on a little bit earlier, and that is, what if 3 of the states actually decertify and Trump nor Biden have enough electoral votes? We're going to be in a conundrum here, and the argument that some of the people are saying the Supreme Court has taken the side that they don't want to cause chaos. So now we're going to be subject to chaotic behavior, and therefore we should just shut down and allow what has already been, in theory, decided to be the case.
Wait. No, there's actually a very clear and concise path to how this works. This has been established a long time ago. This will not. There's just look at the path of what happens if it gets decertified, and if neither one of them gets to 270, there's a very clear procedure of what happens. Easy to find, very easy to find, and it's complicated. I'm not going to tell you it's not, and that's why I'm not going to sit here and get into it, because it's very complicated how this system works.
Well, it's not so complicated that it can't be discussed or followed through with. And the bottom line is, if you really want to get in, what really made the light bulb, a couple things happened that just made it go, wait a minute, something's about to happen. Early on in the election, you had little Mike Blomberg, right? Yeah. Trump refers to him as little Mike all the time. You had Senator, he refers to her as Pocahontas. That's all that sticks into my head. What's her?
Oh, Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren. And then you had Biden and Kamala Harris. And those were about your final 4, weren't they? And at one point, suddenly, all of them seemingly got the word, hey, we have a plan in place. You all need to drop out. And when they all dropped out at once, because there were still contentions there.
Pete
and you had
was doing
Sanders
great.
in there,
Sanders was doing
Buttigieg,
great.
and they're all just like, oh, they've got this whole election thing all set up. And this is where I dive into the controversy, conspiracy. To me, the word conspiracy, all it means is a matter of people that have conspired to create some situation. Yes. So whatever you want to call it. But here we are, and as a matter of, and it was very interesting. If you take it down to not the 6 or 7 states, but down to specifically the 6 or 7 electoral counties, not because you didn't have to win the whole state. They just needed to have where the largest population was and control those electoral ballots in those particular counties and for those electoral commissions. And they said, we have figured out the system. I'm not just trying to make another conspiracy. This is some logical stuff that a lot of people have narrowed this down to as a matter of.
It's called political science, and it
they
does
say,
exist.
And they said, absolutely. They said, if they came up with the plan, they said, everybody drop out. We've got this under control. We are going to guarantee that we will win. And in these, so you've got what's the county in Georgia? Macomb County in Georgia. Mm-hmm. You've got Milwaukee, Detroit, Phoenix, so Atlanta, and then and Philadelphia, along with Milwaukee, Detroit. Yeah, you got those. Those your 6. If I missed anything, let me know. Nevada, Las Vegas, right? Those electoral districts within those cities, within those states, was all they figured out, that those are what they had to control. And those are when the votes got nailed down to it, they said, hold on, everybody stop, everybody go home. We got to take a break. We got to figure out how many votes we need to cover here. And then they come in and they count the votes, and now they're finding that they've had 2 times as many votes as they do registered voters. Tell me something's not going on here, Greg. This is insane.
We still have not.
But that's an easy calculation to tally. Explain to me how this is possible. You get more people that have voted than are registered in the district, and you start throwing out all the dead people, all the people who voted twice.
This is where the information gets skewed, and again, you should do your research. There is no evidence that there are more votes cast than registered voters. What people had been going off before were 2016 data from the last census. So you can't use 2016 census data to cover a 2020 election. More people voted than have ever voted before. People were energized. Arizona is a great example. Look, Arizona hasn't gone blue forever. And this is a direct reflection, I think personally, on Trump. I don't think it is a reflection on the Republican Party. I think it's a reflection of Trump. When Trump went after McCain, the most respected person in the state, and started disparaging him and and even after his death wouldn't leave him alone, that made people in Arizona mad. So it's easy to see how Arizona turned blue this election. I'm not going to say that'll happen again, but it's easy to see in this election. So Arizona is an example of Arizona went blue. That's all there is to it. He just screwed up. He went after the wrong guy, and he should have left it alone. He made a couple of tactical errors, or he would have won this election.
You mentioned me earlier in the pregame prep in the green room. Had Trump just decided, because there was a bit of a controversy where he was seen in public, seen in public not wearing a mask.
But then other times seen wearing a mask.
And other times wearing it. But he kind of came across with the stance that if you want to wear a mask, you go ahead, but as president, I'm not going to wear a mask. He effectively, I argue, got shamed into wearing a mask. Because if you study the data and really analyze what the effects of wearing masks are, they're almost null.
60%. Do your research.
60% what?
60%. It's the only protection we have right now from this thing. Now we have a vaccine, but before the vaccine, masks were the only protection against this.
And masks
60%.
don't
do your research.
Effectively do anything other than make it worse, because then you touch your face more likely. Now you're going to pass on the germs that you are storing in your face with your diaper on your face, and then say, "Oh, okay, now pick up a salt shaker, pick up a microphone,
Another
touch a doorknob." It's not. It's much more logical than people.
No,
because the argument.
Visit 10 sites. 8 of them will tell you he's wrong.
And they're all liberal, and they spend a lot of time and money. But here's the perspective I have on this. The odds are, statistically, somebody looked this up. It's not even hard to calculate.
Exactly.
What are the odds? Because they don't argue that it stops breath, because breathing through these things, the air goes around and through them anyway. Right. So the argument is it stops droplets,
stops spit
physical spit droplets
Absolutely.
From being transferred. You tell me then how often somebody spits into your mouth or up your nose.
People spit on each other all the time. We have all been spit on by someone else.
At some point,
of us have been spit on by someone else speaking. And the louder we speak, just like this, the more animated we get, the louder we speak, the more, and the farther it projects. That's why we don't want.
And I would argue, Greg, just think. All right, let's think about this as a matter of statistical analysis. Right. I know every time somebody spits on me, I feel it hit my face, and
Absolutely.
I go like this. And it probably happens to me once a week.
Yeah.
Once a week. Okay, so you fair it's once a week?
Sure.
Then if we'll go with that. So once a week somebody does spit on you. Not necessarily in your mouth or not up your nose, right. But they do spit on you.
Or you do this, and then later on you put your hand.
But it doesn't transfer. The only way it has to land into an orifice to get into your body. It doesn't soak through your.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You put it on your hand. We all know how.
So then more, but that's why I say you are 10 times more likely. This is like a matter of basic physiology and logic. You are 10 times more likely to actually have touched your face with the actual same germs, now touched them onto another surface. They touch the same surface, pick it up and put it in their mouth, or put it on their eyes.
So this is why hand washing is so important.
And it's where, so people
social
never
distancing and hand washing. These are
people
the
never.
Things we've been told from the very beginning.
But I'm saying, as a matter of transfer,
60%.
As a matter of transfer, You are 10 times more likely to have touched your face and touched an object that somebody else is going to touch than you are statistically to spit into their mouth or to spit into their eye.
It all
you
goes
even
together.
acknowledged to me that.
No, it all goes
I know,
together.
but I'm saying to you, if you would just take the mask off and allow yourself to breathe normally, because you're not going to spit anyway, now you're not harvesting all those germs on your face. But
This is why we
you just
wear
said to me
these.
once a week you're going to spit in somebody's eye. I touch my nose every you know how many times?
Look, it depends. Now you're using something against me. It depends on how close contact you are with people, how often you're in close contact. Look, I have a venue that holds lots of people, and they get really close to each other all the time. It's families. They're on top of each other, constantly hugging each other. They're right in each other's face, and this is how it is. And this is why those type of activities are not safe anymore. Now, look, I'm going to go into something real. I'm not big on shutting down businesses. I don't agree with that. If people will wear these masks, this is a huge difference. Now, my business, gatherings of large people, still not the best of ideas, and we know that. But these local restaurants and these things that are just, I'm a big mask fan. That's all there is to it. Another thing we pregame in the green room we were talking about, I think Trump would have won the election had he just told people to put on a mask. I really think he would have won hands down. I think it was another tactical error. I think he made 4 or 5 major tactical errors in his run for president for re-election. And had it not been for those 4 or 5 things, I think he would have won handily. And I think this is one of them.
Well, that was part of the point we were going to make. I didn't finish that. I apologize. But yeah, the point is that this is what we're having a discussion about. And I say you are 10 times more likely. Do you know how many times you actually touch your face per hour? I've researched this.
That's why you wash your hands all the time.
Okay, well, some people do. How often do you touch your face per hour? How many times?
I don't know.
Between 16 and 23 times per hour. So now you've got 16 times an hour, not once a week, we discussed when you're actually going to spit on somebody by accident. You have 16 to 23 times an hour that you're touching your face that is now contaminated because you've got the germs that you're storing on your face.
And where did the germs come from?
When you sneeze,
your sneeze, your spit,
Why would you? But when you do that, normally it just falls to the ground. It falls to the space.
No, it doesn't.
You sneeze into it.
Sneeze does not fall to the ground.
Where does it go?
It goes into it's aerosol, dude.
And it falls to the ground. So that's why they're saying 6 feet. So if you're sneezing on somebody, then give yourself 6 feet. But if you're not sneezing on somebody, the odds of you actually spitting into their mouth are so limited. You are 10 times more likely to have actually touched your face right after you sneezed and then pass it on to somebody else.
Sure.
Why would you keep the germs?
Don't sneeze into
why
your
do
hands,
you
sneeze into your elbows? I sneeze down my shirt. I always have. I don't know, ever since I was a kid.
But why do you store the germs on your face in the mask? Now you touch it with your hands, then you pass it on much more readily. Then I would say, why are the cases so high? That's why. And ultimately what it's going to do, herd immunity. So thank you guys for wearing your masks.
That's why the masks are important.
To help us continue to spread the virus more readily, so that we can
so
get
backward.
to herd immunity.
I want a scientist in here.
Yeah, well, I would. And there's
I
a lot.
would love to have a scientist in here.
Patrick Bet-David is one of the best known commentators in the world. He actually made the same argument. I was looking all over somebody else and said, does anybody else just see the basic logic here? And that is, and he took a mask that he had just worn for a short period of time, and inside that mask had all kinds of germs on it.
You kept it to yourself.
But if you
didn't spew those germs to other people.
But then statistically, right now, do you think you and I have exchanged germs into your eyes or into my mouth across it?
Look, I'm glad I wear glasses. This is one of the times.
But that's what I'm saying.
I am
then both
so
of us
glad
should be
I wear
wearing
glasses,
a mask right
once
now.
in a while,
Are we?
Drops right on.
We're 6 feet apart from each other, approximately, whatever, close to that.
You're like 3.5.
No, this is 3.
This is 3.5. Okay, so my arm is about 3.
We're about.
I'm 6 foot tall.
And it's like so then we technically, but you and I are around each other enough so that we're gonna have spread these germs into like family or whatever that is. So that's the argument where families don't have to. But what are the odds statistically, if you really want to get down to it? You're much more likely to have had the dirty diaper. One of the other doctors I work with says why are you wearing a facial condom that on your face that you now it's covering, just clicking all the germs.
Keep your germs to yourself.
And then now you touch your face and then you pass them on to somebody. Whereas if you were going to actually spit on somebody, like, that isn't going to happen. And if you would have breathed out into the open air, they would have fallen to the floor before they got in somebody's face.
Aerosol, dude.
Oh, so then, but okay, we talked about it, but it's not a matter of breath; it's a matter of droplets. Is it droplets or is it breath? If it's breath, then these masks don't stop that anyway.
They stop the bigger ones that travel farther. That's okay.
Okay, but then
Again,
those,
people do
but
your
the
research.
odds are very
8 of
statistic.
10. 2 people will tell you exactly what first. The other 8 will tell you differently.
No. Well, that just you got to get into. All right, so the whole discussion about masks, and we're just going to have to get through this.
Right.
Whether the people want to follow the logic or the method of potential wizardry.
And also research herd immunity, because herd immunity doesn't just happen by everybody getting it. That's not how herd immunity works. Herd immunity works by having the vaccine, vaccinating a certain number of people have it, then you start building the herd immunity. It doesn't just come from everybody having it, because now we know people can get reinfected. So we've had our first couple of people get reinfected with this thing. This is not, and now there's a new strain coming that has mutated, and they tried to keep it in Europe or in England, and they haven't been able to, because now they know for sure, as of today, it has spread to Germany as well. So this new strain is going to spread also very quickly. It's way more contagious, but about the same death rate. So, but more and more people will get it, which is why the vaccine can between the two. If we can get most people vaccinated and then some people get sick, that's when you start building the herd immunity. You need the combination. You can't just do it with one or the other. I mean, this is directly from Dr. Fauci and several other scientists. So.
Yeah, one of the last guys I believe anybody should actually listen to. So we could get into that discussion.
He's only been doing science his entire life.
Well, and he was also the guy that a lot of people say was responsible for the spread of AIDS, and he did it on purpose. And there's a whole documentary about that too, where they could have stopped it. And they said, "Wait a minute, we got too much money to make on this. Make Fauci the front end of this, face of this, and he's the doctor that will tell everybody it's okay." And that gets squashed naturally behind all the. This doctor that was claiming that now she can't be found suddenly, and she's been threatened and all kinds of crazy stuff. It's a crazy world we're living in these days, Greg, and hopefully we can all make it through this. Back to a touch on immunity. Immunity is a fact that when somebody's had it, you want them to get it, and then their body builds up to it. So now they're not going to be able to spread it. Somebody cannot get it from somebody that has an active virus in their system, because they've already
actually can get it from people who already have had it, and you can get it again.
But that's a matter of the actual way that herd immunity works. Is that now that you don't want people around you that might have had it, then they get it, they're going to potentially have not asymptomatic, but they pass it on to you. You don't quarantine the healthy people. You quarantine the potentially high risk, and those are sick. It's been completely backwards.
Wait. Now here's the one thing we do agree on. This is where I agree. Had we, at the very beginning of this, started a testing, tracing, quarantining system like most of the countries around the world did, but again, we had a president. This is one of the major factors I was talking about that kept him getting reelected. He was, no, that's not what we're going to, he didn't want to spend the money. And that's basically what it was. I'm not spending all this money and now we are the worst in the world with virus and how this is spreading. And this could have all been avoided. And there's a lot of people really mad about the fact that he didn't take the time to go through, quarantine the people that were sick, trace, and have the whole system set up, because we as Americans have freedoms, and a lot of us just aren't going to go for that. And just like, but other countries are willing to for the public good. In Japan, they wear masks. If they have a common cold, they wear a mask. I saw it. I lived there. I saw it all over the place. You knew exactly who was sick. You knew they protected themselves, they kept their sickness to themselves, and they went about their day.
I would argue that in America, we don't wear masks when we're sick. As a matter of fact, we stay home. We don't go out in public.
We don't.
Well, I don't know anybody that has the flu and goes, "Hey, I'm going to go out to the club tonight. Hey, I'm going to hit the gym, everybody." Everybody's.
You've not seen sick people out in public?
They don't overtly just go out. I know I'm sick as hell. I got the flu, and now I'm going to go hang out. I mean, that's just not the way Americans do things.
Yes,
if you're wearing if you're sick enough to where you feel you should wear a facial mask, then you should probably not be out in public. And that's just part of the way.
You shouldn't be out in public. But the point is,
and
our American freedoms are not going to stop that. We are going to go out in public if we want to go out in public. That's part of our problem here. Is we can do whatever we want, and it's not good for situations like this. Look how infected our country is compared to other countries around the world. Now, I understand India. I've been to India, too. India is super poor, and they live right on top of each other. There is no way to get away from each other. unless you're in a certain sect like the Brahmins or everyone. I even went to the slums of Calcutta one day, and eye-opening. Oh my goodness! But everybody is literally right on top of each other. They can't get away from each other. Here we have the option mostly to get away from each other, but that's why it breaks out so bad in the big cities first, because everybody's right on top of each other. But our problem is now that it's spread to the outlying areas because people won't follow the system. They won't. There's just a bunch of deniers in this country. That doesn't exist. It's fake. Well, who started all that fakeness? And this is not again, a part of the reason. I just really think, I think Trump would have won handily if he had just done 2 or 3 to 4 different things. And those that I've touched on, at least 3 of them.
Well, some good points you make there, and a strong argument. I think that it's a matter of running the economy better than had been run in, I don't know, they've talked since World War II, since the Great Depression. Just a lot of good things.
The economy was great.
A lot of great things he did. This China virus was, a lot of people argue, deliberately released in an effort to try to bring down our economy.
Yeah, who knows?
How much?
It could have been. Now, I don't mean to cut you off, but there's a lot of literature about that too. And even in past Japanese or Chinese writings, the easiest, they've tried to take down the American economy in a lot of different ways. Yeah, this is kind of a conspiracy theory, I guess. But again, what's the easiest way to take down the biggest superpower? And we don't know whether this was real or fake. I've talked to epidemiologists from both sides, and this one is pretty much split with the people I've spoken to. So sorry about that.
No, that's good. And now I forgot my point, so now I got to go back to. But I do recall now, and it's a matter of, there are some people that argue that, and this is where I really get into the history of not just the United States, but the history of our little planet. China has been used to.
I like how you said our little planet.
Our little planet, right? And somebody said I use the word "little" too often, but
I love it. I think it's great.
But
it's a little planet.
It kind of takes the fact that we're kind of on a small scale here, and we all get along. We got to we learn to tolerate and understand and be friendly towards each other. Yeah. But the history of this little planet actually has dynasties, and the only time you hear the word dynasty is when you're talking about a little country called China, and that's because they had thousands of the Han dynasty, all these dynasties they had that had literally lasted for centuries, hundreds or thousands of years. So then you really get down to, this is where the big issue I believe we're all heading towards, and it's been coming for a while, because China, the only time in their history where they were not a dominant force has been about 150 years since the early 1900s. If based on some of the study I was,
they weren't dominant at all. Even in like the 40s, they were. So
that's what I'm saying. So you go back to the early 1900s, and prior to that, I mean, they were dynasties up until like the 1500s.
But so lots of other Asian countries were too.
But the point is this: is that there is essentially a culture that has been ingrained in the way that all Chinese are raised, if you will, or some people say trained or indoctrinated, right? Yeah. But raised in that their culture is that the government is all omnipotent. There's no room for any religion, right? You can't preach Christianity or Buddhism or any kind of specific religion. Some of the religions did come from Christianity, but they've been shut down now. And it's because then once you have the control of the people and you believe that the government is all powerful and they are looking out for the benefit, they are more powerful and more vital to the survival of the people who live there than the family. It's government, family, and that's the priority. Whereas the United States, it's God, government, and then your own, God, family, then the government, right? And so it's just
I'm not sure God is the top.
In God we trust. I mean,
well, that was added in like the 50s or so. That was never on our money.
Well,
that was
and to really get into a matter of the American culture is not really. That is the theory of the priorities. A lot of people preach, but ultimately Americans are known for their own individualism, right?
Yes.
As an individual, you get your own individual perspective. That is what takes priority. Everyone has the right as an individual, which it benefits everyone well if every person is then held accountable, and then they can contribute and then create something exciting, and capitalism kicks in. Right. But that is the opposite of what happens over in China. So now we're going to have a collision of two different cultures, because the United States really came out of nowhere, if you want to talk about it, with regard to the country was established 1776, or some people say late 1600s, and then kind of developed and kind of spread and took over this land, and then the 1700s, and then the 1800s, and it wasn't until after World War II where the United States kind of emerged, survived, the ones that didn't get the most damage after the wars, World War I and World War II, and then we emerged, and our economic strategy kicked in, and this wealth of nations capitalist Adam Smith strategy kicked in, and then we emerged as the all-powerful because we were giving people, for the first time in humanity's history, the opportunity to create something and to benefit from what you created, right? Yes. It wasn't created by the government. It wasn't created by some other higher power. It was created by the individual who took the chance, and this is the Adam Smith strategy, Wealth of Nations again. And we were the first time we've ever done that in the history of the world, was done right here in the United States of America. And look what it did. It propelled the United States to be the all-powerful with regard to overall money. If you want to look at GDP, number one, United States. Number two, China. But our GDP per capita is about 5 times still what the number 2 country is with China. So now you've got to get into a discussion of, okay, now you've got this new method that has kind of evolved. It took forever because it used to be just kingdoms and then servants or servitude, whatever you want to call it. And now we've got this new thing where anybody can come out of nowhere. America's the land of the great. We the people. You can come here to America and start with nothing and turn into a millionaire, and then you give your money to your kids, and then they become broke, right? Because they didn't learn the same skills that you did to develop it and to maintain it. And it just cycles. But everyone benefits from that. And that's the first time in the history of humanity that's been done. Versus the historic method, which is a lot of times the king, the ruler, right, and then falls on down from there. And religion is not even potentially allowed in the Chinese culture, which is really emerging now. So the real question is there going to be a giant clash between this Chinese culture, the culture of government is all omnipotent, and the individual culture, which is American? And they're going to have to figure out which one of those is going to be predominant. I would argue that once you give people the true sense of freedom, that's why people want to sneak out of China and sneak into America, because that's the more adaptive towards what humans are really designed to be most happy with. And so when these clash, because they've been setting us up, some people say, and buying our debt and owning much more of America than we should have allowed for. And we're allowing socialism in to help people when we should have let the banks crash. We should have let the mortgage industry crash, and that would have fixed all of that. But they've been propped up, and so socialism has creeped in, and now we're getting to an unbalanced state where now this government-first strategy is going to take over, but what then is ultimately going to last? And that's the big collide I see here. Now if I get pop-ups on my YouTube, it shows me, hey, watch this speech from this guy in Australia who talks about the rise of China. And this is where I'm getting a lot of this from.
Well, there is a rise of China, and their economy will surpass us.
And a lot of people argue that. So, Greg, talk about that. Is that the big wake-up call that's coming our way?
Well, we've already been seeing this happen, and whether we wake up to it or not is, I guess, our decision. But China's economy will overtake ours, and probably in the next, I would guess, probably 20 years, if I had to guess. And we already know this is happening. Again, researchable. We lost our manufacturing. We lost what made us great, the Industrial Revolution. All the inventions, all the people using their brains to collectively and allowing individuals to step up. And I'm not going to say everything he said about China is correct, because there's a lot of good in China. I know people that actually live there right now, and they have a lot of freedoms, and they do just about anything they want. But there's certain things they obviously can't do. We just saw the girl get thrown in jail for her reporting of the Wuhan facility and the virus coming. And we see a lot of other atrocities. I'm not going to say there's not atrocities in China, but they live very similar to how we live. If you actually look it up, I had a good friend that just taught there for years. She went every year for 10 years, and she told me all about it. She said it's modern, just like Japan. I mean, it's modern. There's everything you want, you can get. So they wouldn't be the emerging economy if it wasn't true. And they're going to take over our economy there's not much we can do right now. We're going to have to change some serious things to keep this from happening. And one of them is, bring back manufacturing, I think. I think that's a big one. Start making our own products, our own medicine. Everything we need for medicine comes from China. Well, they could easily cut us off at any time, and we would be in a hurt. Most of the cell phone materials come from China. I mean, we allowed a lot of this stuff to happen, and now we're looking back on it like, well, wait, how did this happen? Well, it's not too hard to figure out if you go back. I mean, we were, and now we're taking a real chance on not being the top dog anymore. Yeah, we might have the coolest war toys and we might be able, but I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if we're prioritizing what we should be doing. I mean, half of our budget is spent on military. I guess it's to preserve our way of life, but when our way of life becomes the second and possibly third and possibly fourth way of life, well, what are we actually protecting? I would think we would want to protect what we already have as far as building up our economies and bringing our poorest people up to working status to where we can actually get them into factories working and get them producing things. And we need to produce again in this country. We don't produce anymore. You know, we're a country of users now. And we do produce some things, but I just think that's the biggest key. And that's the thing I do give Trump kudos for. He spoke about it a lot. We need to bring manufacturing back to this country. And I agree. We need to bring manufacturing back to this country. So everything's not as it used to be. Do the research, look into these other countries, see what's going on. And I think you're going to be amazed. They stop a lot of the information from coming out, but that's just because I don't think they want us to know how well they're doing. I think that's part of it. That's the government run. And just like Carter said, their government pretty much controls everything. So if we can change a little bit of the trajectory of manufacturing alone, I think that's what would really propel us and get some of these things we are heavily reliant on. And stop selling our stuff to China. And stop buying Chinese stuff. I mean, come on, you guys really want to make a difference? Start buying American. When you pick up that little $1.25 tin of cookies and it's, and you see made in China, put that thing back on the shelf and go over and buy the American brand that you're going to pay 50 cents more for. If you really want to help America, buy American.
So that's where the rubber hits the road, if you will, with regard to we are now looking at a much more truly global economy.
Am I going to need to put my mask on, man? You're hacking and coughing a little bit. I know. You make me nervous.
Got a little bit caught up there, but hey, I mean, you got to take your risks. Sometimes you might. Like I said, I got into.
Sure
I was on television a couple of weeks ago having a discussion, and I brought up the fact that the bars were paying attention to the rules. They were playing by the rules, and I had actually known people who deliberately quarantined, did not go out because they were at high risk from being pregnant, didn't want to potentially expose, and got COVID anyway. Then they took the time to say, hey, how many people I knew went out publicly around hundreds of people at dozens of different events, never got COVID. So really when you get down to this thing, what is really going on with the overall COVID? All right, we've kind of beat that one up. We'll come back to that one.
Let me say one thing, though.
Another show, maybe.
Let me say one thing. COVID happens when COVID is present, and it spreads very quickly when it's present. But if it's not present, then it's just like before. We're all just people doing our thing. But the problem with it is no one knows if it's present. So one person in a room of 100 can affect all 100 really quickly. But if 100 people are in a room and nobody's sick, nobody's going to get anything because nobody's sick. So that was just a quick point I wanted to point out. You have to first have a sick person in order for it to spread, but now we know how fast this thing spreads, and the next one that's coming spreads 4 times as fast, I think it is. I checked my math on that one, but I think it's 4 times as fast.
Well, and that's where, you've got to get down to, and then I ultimately default to, and I say, hey, it's a matter of what are your statistical odds of dying from COVID? And that is, if you're at high risk, you're an elderly age, if you're over the age of 75, you have 3% chance of dying. If you're under the age of 75, it drops like this to where it's almost to where no one dies, and I can't say no one because there might have been 1 or 2 people out of millions that are in healthy ages, under the age of, especially when you get on 45 and younger, 35 and kids, right. Nobody's dying from this.
Well, some
outside.
People are.
And it's, but the number, and it gets to where, and this is where I get fired up because most people don't contemplate or propose the alternative. What's going on outside of this, as if we're in a tunnel and this is the only thing that we can talk about or focus on. And I just saw a study last night. Drug overdose deaths are up 4 times what they were prior to COVID.
I believe that.
So when you have an annual average mortality rate of 60, I looked this up, 60,000 people typically die every year from drug overdoses. We'll take 6 times 4. Now you're up to 240,000. Now you would have had the 60,000 that did that, right? So now you're down to, you've added another 180,000 that wouldn't have died if things had just stayed normal and we didn't have an epidemic and then therefore collapsing of our economy and all these jobs were taken away. So now you've just added 180,000. Greg, how many people have died from COVID?
Right now in the U.S., what is it, 200,000? No,
It's about 330,000.
300,000, yeah.
And that's if you don't count comorbidities, because when you add the fact that, and sadly, and my dad, a lot of people know, recently just passed, did not die of COVID, but died as a result of the repercussion. This is the stat number 4 I talk about. We'll jump over a couple, but stat number 3 is the fact that now we have a huge increase in people dying because they are not getting the treatment that they would normally have had to figure out if their cancer was growing, to get the radiation treatment stopped for their lymphoma, for their leukemia, and they're not going to the doctors because they've been shut down. They got to protect them. And so now we've had at least a doubling of those amount of people. Now, if we just had an increase of 180,000 that are dying from drug overdoses that wouldn't have died, how many of those people now how many more people are sick that have treatments they should be going through? So is that normally 150,000 and now it's just doubled is all to another 150,000 to 300,000? Now you have more deaths from the cause rather than the cure, right? And the cure cannot be worse than the cause. And this is what kills me, drives me freaking nuts, because people are going, oh my God, COVID, COVID, COVID. You are causing more. If you care about deaths, if that's really what the frickin' you care about, then you're killing more people by the cause or the potential cure, right, than the actual cause itself. So, and it gets down to it, it's just freaking stupid, and nobody will step out of the box and look at these numbers, because then you got to throw on malnutrition, and you also have to throw on suicides. And when you put all of those together, you're close to 500,000 people minimum that died as a result of the cure versus the actual cause, and that's way more than actually died from COVID, especially when you start talking about the fact that there is the average person that dies from COVID, it's a comorbidity. It's not their primary cause of death. It's 2.3 other comorbidities for 94% of the people who actually died from COVID. It was a so there's only 6% of those people died purely from COVID, which brings it down to something like, we'll take 10% of 330,000 would be 33,000. So if you're a little above half that, you're talking 16,000. You have better odds of getting in a fatal act. You are 10 times more likely to die in an accident, because every year there's about 160,000 people who die in an accidental death. Not talking about just cars, talking about trains, falling off a ladder, whatever it is. 160,000 people die a year from accidents versus 16,000 people that actually died from COVID itself. Now I've said my piece, Greg. Tell me what your thoughts are about that. Did I sound fired up?
Yeah, it was great. Okay, so
I am
like that
fired
stuff.
up.
I know you are. So the idea with COVID, obviously, and this goes back to, not getting other treatments, is, we know a lot more than we used to know about this whole disease, and we know better how to treat it than we did before. And the idea is, if we can keep the hospitals from getting overrun, then the hospitals will have the ability to keep their normal patients coming in. And this is where the vaccines, the masks, all these social distancings, if we can keep people from getting sick in mass amounts, it's the overrunning of the hospitals that cause all these problems. Because if you only have 10 ventilators and 12 people need them, well, guess what? 2 people are dying. That's just all there is to it. So I understand the flip side of what he's saying, but the idea is keep people out of the hospitals. And the other thing about COVID has exposed a great deal of problems that we never really wanted to talk about in this country. But now we get the opportunity to talk about them. Why do we have people going hungry in this country? We have land all over this country that is, now I know this for a fact, my grandpa was a farmer. We have land all over this country that is being paid for by the United States government not to be farmed. Does that make sense? The government is giving farmers money not to plant crops. Now, we understand the economy of scale and, corn needs to be at this price, but wouldn't it make a little more sense for the government not to spend that money, the farmers to go ahead and plant, and then we feed people. Why do kids have to pay for school lunches at school? I don't agree with that. I think all lunches for kids should be free. I just think that if you go to school, a lunch should be provided for you. This causes all kinds of disparities in our culture. Think about the kids that come, get the vending machines out first of all, but think about all the kids that come to school. Some of them can afford food, some can't. So you got these kids sitting right next to kids eating a steak sandwich, and this kid can't afford to. You talk about inequality amongst people, that's the easiest way to start creating inequality. It's like the old meme, hey, don't do what that guy, you need to go to college so you don't have to sweep that street over there. You don't need to be that guy. That's part of our problem right now. We're teaching people that they should be better than other people. We're just people. We can take care of each other and get through stuff if we take care of each other and we care enough to take care of each other. But it's an individualistic society, and I'm going to get what's good for me. That's the American way. It's a big part of our problems with what's going on.
Great discussion. We knew we'd have this. We're going to continue this, ladies and gentlemen. This will be hopefully at least a weekly show we have here with Uma. We didn't put Uma on your slide there.
I don't know if we did or not.
I got excited about getting Greg Upchurch. Greg, political and business owner, and just an all-around great guy, by the way. Thanks for coming down and spending some time with me in Florida with my family. That helped. That was
fantastic.
Done. And we got to go check out Key West.
Well, and before he gets too far, I got to spend one of his father's last days with him, and that was absolutely fantastic. That I didn't know I was going to get to do this. It was a spur of the moment, and we went out on the boat, and man, that was just fantastic. So
yeah, you never know.
I want to thank you for that, because that's one of those. I just want to thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I didn't look back, but the picture that's on my phone as my wallpaper is a picture of me and my dad together. One of the last times I didn't know it would be one of the last times we were together on my boat, and you were there in the background, and you were the reason he got on the boat was because, and maybe I could have done it by myself with my mother,
No way.
or maybe, but it would have had to have been somebody else help me. But Greg helped us to lift.
We wouldn't have definitely gotten him up to the restaurant.
Yeah, let's say
that
we end up. It's funny. We end up going to the boathouse, and Greg helps. We lift my dad onto the boat, and it's got enough of a platform in the back where we could put his wheelchair down there, and then get him around and take him up. And then we got him up and pushed him up the little ramp to the boathouse. And then we're like, there's steps that go up to the top. There's no way to get to the boathouse restaurant area.
There's like 15 of them.
Unless you do that. And I said, here we go. So Greg and I each got on each side of him. We just carried him up the steps. Get to the top of the steps, and then we talked to my buddy Rick, who owns the place, and he says, you guys could have just used the elevator. Which
he was
is
obviously
not,
joking.
There is no elevator. It's a nice place, but they do not have an elevator there.
But Pat Liston was playing that day, which was a total bonus.
And yeah, if you ever have a great opportunity to spend some time on the Mississippi River, check out the boathouse. Check out what used to be my river home, now Longshot Marina. And they're just right across from the cliffs. I come out from there all the time. That's where I have my boat. And just beautiful stuff. There's a drone floating somewhere down. It probably is sank to the bottom. And it's an older drone, and I was a little upset. We do have the new drone now. But we had a great shot. It did get me because I'm the nerd where I can feed it back to live to my stream and then put it out. So we got it. I looked up. I'm like, oh, it went down over there instead of where we thought it went. But that was an older Phantom. It was a nice Phantom Standard 720.
Yeah, but now Florida was great, man. I got to tell you, Florida was a good time.
And we got the Mavic now. We took the Mavic down there. We never broke out all the equipment. We brought a whole backpack. I've got a portable unit that I can live stream from anywhere. Break out the laptop, multiple cameras, microphones, speakers, cameras, lights. And we never broke it out. But it's because we had so much fun. We got to go to – what did you think was most exciting about what we did down in Florida? Was it SeaWorld? I mean, what do you think?
Okay, personally for me, it was the second day at SeaWorld. We went the first day.
Okay, we did get to go twice.
And it was cool. I mean, we all had a great time. But it was the second day going back, knowing what we knew the first day, because it's almost impossible to see that whole park in one day. Unless you start real early in the morning and beat yourself up and stay till the very end of the night. But I thought that second night was really cool. That and the fish I caught. I went fishing one day too without them, and I caught a couple. I caught a big, nice sheep's head, and brought it home, fed my mom. That was cool.
Well, and we've got a ton of comments here that we'll touch on here briefly. Let's talk a little bit about somebody a mention here from great info. Matt Mesner said great info. Nancy says, I'm in Northern California. We have, I got to change our title.
Hi, Northern California.
How are you doing?
I like Northern California.
CA. Nobody can tell me Trump didn't win. That's from Matt also. China has Navy is much larger than ours. And then somebody, Megan comments, the Navy took out some of their our nuclear sub, took out some of their nuclear subs. Interesting. You never know. Richard Britt, why would this country want to be run by the government? What are these people thinking? Can't they look at these other countries where people are trying to escape from? Soon you will not have a choice. That's part of the discussion we had there. Why no more riots? Well, there might be some coming, and there's
Who
certain
knows?
people that's the method they use. And if you get into it, it's a Soviet tactic. If you look into or a socialist tactic, it's in the book for rules for radicals. Is you've got to create mayhem. You got to create chaos.
Well,
That's how you get everybody.
It creates news. And if it doesn't get on the news, well, people don't know what happens.
And
that's why it's so hard to touch people now. I'm sorry, but this is why it's so hard to touch people now, because we were talking about this earlier. There's so many different availabilities to push content out. It all gets lost in the jumble. That's why back when the 3 networks, there were people, you had to, give facts or you got kicked off the air. Now people can say whatever including us. We can say whatever we want. It's really interesting.
And thank God that's the way it is here in America. You
Yeah.
can still do that. And who knows? I might get some haters. We might get some lovers. Who cares? We want to hear I like to hear. I thought for a long time, like, why do we need to hear everybody's opinion? Why is freedom of the press so important? And I really realized you need to hear what the bozos are thinking.
Yes,
If you don't-
everyone.
And if some people are crazy, you want to know what these crazy
Yes.
thoughts they have. It helps them. They will expose themselves, and then you know who to track and who to dig into to figure out what they were the ones causing the problems. But if you don't let them speak freely, they'll tell you whatever they want to.
Well, and that's the thing with the other side too. Same thing. Listen to both sides. Don't get caught in your little bubble, and that's all you're paying attention to. I don't care what side you're on. Don't do that. Get information from everywhere, then make your own decisions. I'm not going to tell you your decision's wrong. I'm not going to tell him he's wrong or right. It's his opinion. His opinion's great. My opinion is my opinion. Your opinion's your opinion. But get the information so you make a quality opinion.
Richard says it's about population control. That's why they're not worried about the cause is worse than the cure. Thank you, Richard. The problem
that's a good comment, because there's a lot to that.
the problem with a country like China is you don't have a choice of freedom. Again from Richard, if masks work, why shut everything down? There you go.
That's I don't agree with shutting things down. I think we should all put on masks and go about our daily lives, and because they work. That's the point.
Soon we will be United States of China. I think I put a comment about that in a previous post. Rich Miller, Trump 2020. Matt says CNN is fake news. Megan, I've been doing that. eBay is tough, so I message the seller now. What she was probably talking about delivery. Dawn, more people, less sick. And I'm going to like each one of these comments. If you would like to call in or stream or join the show, Matt says, "Get 'em, Carter."
Get them.
Who am I getting? I guess you.
Exactly.
Why no? I'm getting
what?
Greg.
Yeah,
Greg gets me some.
ooh.
We get after each
I
other.
think it's a
sometimes.
good comment, though. It's funny.
We appreciate that.
Guys, look, we're friends. We've been friends for a long time. I met him a long, long time ago, and this has just been something that, even though we think differently about politics, we're still friends. We have been for a long time, and we're not going to let politics get in the way of us being friends. And I would hope that everyone watching this could do the same. Don't let something that comes up every once in a while ruin a relationship you've established with somebody for years. That seems just so counterproductive to me. But again, that's my soapbox. Just don't let politics get in the way of being friends with someone.
Well, you need to have these discussions. My dad, rest his soul, God, every time I say my dad, I have to think about now my dad's no longer on this level. He's at a different level now. His energy, you cannot destroy energy. You can only change its form, right? And so that's the best explanation I have for the fact that now, yes, I was there when his body was empty of his soul or his consciousness, but he's at another level right now. I won't share any more specifics, but I've had discussions with some other people who are close friends, and they said there will be times when you have, if you believe in God, if you believe in a higher power, believe in whatever related religion it might be to your heart, but where they will visit you, and it's not a dream, it's a reality. And again, I don't want to get too much of the personal stuff, but discussion within the family, there has been some talk about that, and it puts you at ease, because then you realize they're not just an empty body and that's it. They're still around. And my dad was in pretty poor health by the time he finally passed, but he had a severe stroke that I made the argument. I'm a stats guy. I looked it up as I was probably in the lobby, not driving. I wouldn't do something like that, but I looked up the stats as I was flying down to the hospital. The first time he had a stroke, I don't remember exactly but I think it was December 15th at 9 p.m. in St. Clair, Fenton, Missouri. And but I was up at an induction into a charity event, and they're blowing me up, and I'm like, finally they sent me a text, and I looked at my phone because I was in the middle of induction, and they said, "Get down here, Dad has had a stroke." Anyway, I looked it up. It's a brain bleed, and 45% of the people who have that kind of a brain hemorrhage do not survive. 55% do. So he made it into the 55% that do. But of the 55% that do survive, the life expectancy is minimal, to say the least, especially given the damage that is caused. And so it got to where he could not hardly swallow for a long time, and forever, really, at the full level he was at prior. And that ultimately caused some of the problems he had, because he began to choke the night this all happened. It was November 29th. And I guess I want to jump forward to a bit of the discussion, if I can, just a little bit about the progression here to help other people understand. And I've learned the golden rule is do unto others as you would want done unto you, right?
I would hope.
Right. But the other part of that is the more people you help, the better your life becomes. That's just
Amen.
That's quote unquote the secret.
That is the secret.
And then I just by now I get kind of a high off of what I've been able to. Been fortunate to do with what I do with the Cardinal Cowboy, and I just wait for the next thing I can do to help somebody. And sometimes helping somebody is telling them the hard-nosed truth rather than the make them feel good and get them to like you thing. That actually backfires. That's not helping somebody. Helping somebody is giving them the reality of how they can get through a situation, how to be strong, how to stand up for themselves, how to do what's right, how to stand up and do what is best for the whole situation, not just for them. And that's key to this.
If you're willing to help them, and if you're not willing to help them, stay out of it.
Right? And so what it had boiled down to for me with my dad, it was 55% survive, but they don't normally live past year 2 or 3, and he made it to year 5. But where I was going with this was that during this 5-year, where my mom was the primary caretaker, obviously full time, taking care of my dad, and there every day, every minute, and couldn't be too far from him, or else they had a little bit of a home care health system that helped a little bit too. And I gotta love Kayla, man. She really did a great job helping keep my dad energized and exercising. But after he passed, I put together the slideshow that was going to be obviously what was shown at his funeral. I made a video of it, and we put it up here on the wall. But and enough about my dad and all the stuff with my family. But I hope the message gets across to you, our viewers, that you see that these are the kinds of little things and the impact that these little things have, so that you can learn from them, so you can see the benefits, so you can see the things that I did right, the things that maybe we should have done differently, but we're willing to share all of it. And ultimately, we saw a digression of my dad's health, and we didn't really recognize it until I put those slides together. And there was a picture of my dad right after his stroke. There was a picture of my dad right after the stroke in the rehab facility, the long-term care facility. And then, and there's a number of pictures in between, and then a transgression in many videos I did with my dad. In one video where he was walking, he walked around the entire house, but then as he improved to that level, then he digressed, and it took 5 years to where he could barely lift his legs. He had deteriorated to a guy who was a runner and an athlete that had his legs had deteriorated, atrophied down to not much, and you don't realize. Number one, when somebody's going and how quickly they can be gone. And two, you don't realize the real situation they might be in as it progressed slowly over time, and it's hard to recognize when these small incremental decreases end up where somebody's in a much more serious health. And it wasn't like we've gone all around, what could we have done different? How could we have saved them if we'd have answered sooner, if I would have picked up sooner, if I would have connected with my mom earlier that day? All of those questions go through your mind, but ultimately, we don't decide when we go, right? That's decided by the higher power, our creator. And my dad, I believe, is in a better place right now. It's hard for me because there's times I'm sitting there thinking about him and think about something. I go, oh, my dad said. I'm like, oh, that was what my dad has told me and led me up to believe and understand. And now he's not here. Not on this level, not at this planet. But if you do believe in that afterlife and you do believe there's a heaven or something related to that, boy, he was in bad shape, and now he's in much better shape. And I had somebody else tell me their story. I won't name who, but she had somebody close to her husband had passed and came back and said, I am healthy now, and I'm happy now, and I'll see you again. And you really get down to it, it's really only a matter of a short period of time that we're going to be on this planet without our loved ones. And I say a short period of time. That may be 30, 50, 100 years if we can extend life to where we're all, I'm 48 right now. If I live to be 150, that'd be 102 years. But relative to eternity or the rest of time or wherever our energy goes to where we join together again in the next experience, it'll be a short period of time compared to that. Because the dinosaurs, the history of the world, the Big Bang, everything that created all of this, there's a lot more. There's definitely has to be a higher power. There definitely has to be a God. I've talked to some atheists, and I think I heard the official language or religion of China is atheism. If you have to designate that's not a religion,
I don't know.
But if it is, that just doesn't even make sense, because how do you ultimately go back beyond the Big Bang? Well, where did that come from? And the anomalies that would have to have happened to create the human eye, for instance, as complicated as the human eye is, it could never have happened by accidental evolution of atoms crossing that turn into proteins, that turn into cells, that turn into human beings with the complexity that we have. So definitely believe there's a higher power, definitely believe there's something else after this, and I look forward to the day where I get to spend it again with my dad in the big baseball park in the sky. So I didn't. That's a natural transition here.
That was pretty fun.
And if you want to check out, we'll talk about this book. I'll at least show the book right now. But this was a Christmas gift to me. I know, Greg. Let's transition to a little bit of discussion, if you don't mind, about the Cardinals, because I know you're a Cardinal fan also.
Yeah. Before we do that, I just wanted one of the reasons I was so happy to go with Carter that day was because my father just passed a couple years before, and just like he said, you don't get to choose when you go out. My father actually got that choice. It was very interesting. When he woke up out of his, they intubated him like they're doing with people with COVID, but because he had cloudy lungs, and it was from a drug he took for his heart. But when he woke up and they had killed his kidneys because they gave him too many antibiotics to try to kill what was in his lungs. And when he woke up, he always told me his whole life he would not live off a machine. And when he woke up and saw that dialysis machine, he basically said no, and that was the end of it. And the doctor said, well, you're going to be dead in 3 days. And he said, so be it. I'm not living off a machine. So my father actually had the chance to he's like, I had a great life, man. I'm done. I've been in pain all these years. I've been in the progression, just to watch them slowly progress down. We're all going through this. We're all going to see it. Most of us already have with our parents, but it's an interesting time. So I just wanted to clarify why listening to Carter and being so passionate about his father, it hits home with me too, because I just lost mine less than 2 years ago. So, and the same kind of deal. So I think we should transition into ballparks. That's enough sadness for, and but something I just think, it's something else we also bonded over as friends. I lost mine a little bit for his, and that's again why I give him so much kudos about wanting to be out that day with him. I'm so glad I got to hang out with him.
Well, Greg, yeah, you've been close to me for a number of fun events in life, and we've been buddies for, I guess we trace it back to at least 10 years ago.
Oh, at least.
And maybe longer, maybe 15. I've been in St. Charles now as a resident since 2004, right before the election, 2004.
Well, I've owned my business for it'll be 11 years in February.
And we've hung out, and I saw you not too long ago, and you said, I think I'm going to run for office, and made a great run, unbelievable, pulled off. What you did to run for lieutenant governor was amazing. I'm proud of you for that.
Thanks.
And do it again soon, and maybe you'll run for another political office again going forward.
We'll see how it goes.
And you're a voice in our community. So let's talk a little bit about baseball. And here is our book, Baseball Parks Yesterday and Today. This was a Christmas gift to me this Christmas, 2020. And I'll just give you guys a quick view of it. I haven't even paged through the entire book entirely yet. But there's a nice green, right?
Yeah, green screen.
Green screen, right?
Yeah.
And then you get into
what we can put in front of that.
Yesterday and today. And I think it's neat that it's yesterday and today.
It's brand new. It's not even creased.
Yeah, because there's a lot of parks that are no longer being used, but man, they had a big influence on our culture and on our world. So as you page through here, you can just see, and there are just a ton of great bits here about the history of because our country was essentially built around, and people make the argument, if it wasn't for baseball, people would have nothing to do. We would have had a lot more fights and arguments and wars and disagreements, but we all seem to consolidate and agree to come together around sports and, in particular, our nation's pastime.
All right, we're going to get to the Cardinals section.
Baseball here, and
I'm
I'm probably not
going through this whole
yeah,
book,
I'm not going to
are we?
go
'Cause
through
I'm
the
not
whole
gonna
book,
do
but
this whole-
I'll give you guys just an overview here. San Francisco, AT&T, Seattle's, Phoenix, Coors.
I've been to a lot of these.
The ballpark in Arlington,
The
I've
ballpark
been
in
there.
Seattle is incredible.
And Life in the Sun.
I watched Mark McGuire
There we go.
hit a home run off of
Not bigger than
Randy
Arlington. There we
Johnson
go.
in the Seattle Kingdom. It was. I didn't realize I was fishing up in Alaska. I was a commercial fisherman in Alaska, and I was just happened to be in Seattle before we left, and I knew a baseball game was happening, and I went. I didn't even know who Mark McGuire was. I went to see Canseco, and I'm sitting up there and I knew Randy Johnson was pitching. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. And then Mark McGuire pops up and hits one into the upper deck. It's like one of the longest shots ever hit in the stadium, and I just happened to be there. It was really cool.
Well, this book is really exciting. It does give a lot of detail that we will cover. I'm going to get my camera on everybody here. There we go. But I would just offer that take a look at this particular book, Ballparks Yesterday and Today, and check out the history here because, again, if it wasn't for
Yeah, you haven't even read the Cardinals section,
baseball,
have you?
yeah, and I just honestly was sitting on the table and we decided,
Yeah.
let's talk about it real quick and go over some. But the United States founded and much of its history goes back to the 1800s with baseball. And, before that, you pretty much did your gunslinging. What else did you do as a means of entertainment? And so now
Cards, gambling,
there it is.
drinking.
And so there is the new Busch
Fighting.
Stadium, and I'll probably put this on camera number. I'm gonna put it over camera 1 as I hold this. There it is, and I'll hold this up now. But take a look.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. The new Busch Stadium, been around now since 2006. We're coming up on 2021, so this will be 15 years. And the Cardinals did wait a while before winning a new World Series, another World Series in their new stadium. They opened that new stadium, replaced Busch 2, which was a lot of people don't know the history of the Cardinals stadiums, but it used to be Sportsman Park was renamed to Busch Stadium 1, and then they built Busch 2, which a lot of people consider Busch 1.
Right, the big round one.
Right, and then Busch 2 went from 67, I think. My dad was the first game. He got tickets to the first game right in front of a couple nuns. Oh, wow. And he felt a little guilty about that. But the truth is that my dad was there for the opening of the new stadium. And
Now, was he ever in Sportsman Park?
and I believe he did make it as a kid to Sportsman's Park. My dad
I
was,
went with my aunt once, and I took her to the brand new stadium.
because that would have been early. That was before my time because it was 68. I was born in 72. I don't know when you were.
69.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
then, probably not. I think it was 67, 68.
No, I'm just saying this new ballpark. I took my aunt to this
Oh,
new
okay. The
ballpark
Busch-
right
Busch-
when the
Busch
new
2.
Busch, right
Yeah.
when
And
it
then
just opened. And she, when we were sitting there, told me, and she just passed a week ago, but she just told me that she was in, or she told us at the time she was in Sportsman Park. I was like, wow, so. Just to be around somebody who experienced that was magical.
And just very neat. Baseball is such an important part of our culture and our economy and everything that goes on in America. So check out those parks. 2006, then Busch 3, the new stadium. Everybody knows the Cardinal Cowboy around Busch 3. A lot of it was interesting. A lot of my friends that are ushers and friends I made through being down at Busch Stadium so often did come to my dad's wake, and it was just neat to see all of the kind of unity. I had a total of 60 people, and this is supposed to be a small thing without a lot of people because of the COVID, but 60 of my friends showed up to the
But
wake.
it was cool because it was spaced out, and it was people came in waves, and it wasn't just a bunch of people in a room. I was there for a lot of it.
Yeah, you stayed there for most of it.
Yeah, but it was very cool how people just kind of came in and to show the respect and the way it happened, especially with COVID. So, and everybody had masks on. It's how it was. I mean, the venue required it more so than anything else. So
Right. So let's talk real quickly, if you don't mind. Cardinals baseball. We talked about. So what are the odds that Donald Trump is going to be reelected? Are there better odds that the Cardinals will win the World Series here in 2022? 21.
I'll go one farther and say they'll win the next 2 World Series before Donald Trump wins in 2020 because the people have already spoken.
And there'll be some debate about that. Maybe
I'm
Trump
sure
will come
there
back.
will.
Trump could be back in 2024.
Oh, he could. Now that's
Some people-
that's very reasonable. I don't see that as not being a possibility whatsoever. I fully suspect he'll be back.
And that could be very interesting because when you get down to it might even be strategic. I would argue that if Trump could make as much remembrance here, and he was just voted as the most prolific, the man of the what was it?
Him and Michelle Obama, Trump and Michelle
I
Obama
just
were
got
the
a post up.
2020
President Trump was most admired
most
man
admired. That's it.
in
The Gallup
2020.
poll, though.
Just
So
supplanting.
of all the people that believe in polls, no, just,
Yes, and but Trump, 29 likes or comments about 29 likes or smiles or loves on that particular post on the Cardinal Cowboy. I didn't even comment on that one. I just shared it straight up. Didn't even put my own
Right.
commentary in front of it. But a lot of the TZ and a lot of people that enjoy that, yeah, he might be back. And I make the argument that there's a lot of people. If you get into Peter Schiff is a well-known economist that does a lot to discuss the state of our country, and he goes out into the public and does live streams and
does.
talks to the people that are protesting corporate America, et cetera. And he made a great argument. He says, look, whoever's president for these next 4 years is going to inherit a complete catastrophe that has been building since, some people argue, the early 1980s, but definitely had that hiccup and slight recovery that they propped it up again in 2008. And now it's inevitable. I've got some guys in the real estate world that are telling me, watch out, the foreclosures coming are going to be huge. And
well,
it's
we
gonna
know
be,
that. But also, yeah, the foreclosures are going to be huge. I don't really want to pass over that without saying something about it. I mean, people are getting kicked out of their houses, and it's going to happen a lot next month, right after this break. Even with some of these stimulus checks, people are just so far behind.
And it will be a discussion to be had. So with that, we hope that we have some excitement with regard to some Cardinal baseball back this year.
Let's hope, man.
And when it comes down to it, Greg, what do you enjoy most about going down to a Cardinal game down at Busch Stadium?
Actually going to the game. I like sitting in different places all over the stadium. There was a couple years where I had, same tickets, but I've learned I like moving around the stadium. I like sitting in different places all the time. You meet different people. There's different groups in each area. I mean, you get different views. It's a whole different vibe. I personally like just buying different tickets everywhere around the stadium. Now, of course, I like sitting right behind home plate. Who doesn't? But
And I've been behind home plate a number of times. I just talked to my friend high up with the Cardinals and keeping in touch. Let them know that my dad had passed recently, and that's a change in my little world. But I'll go to the games in memory of my dad, and if it wasn't for baseball, I would not have survived my coma. Most people know that that's a strong perspective I have on life, and baseball gave me the skills to come out of that coma, and my love was for the Cardinals. And I'll never forget watching. Here's another memory that's kicking in, and first time since my dad passed, but sitting at home watching on TV, 1982, Ozzie Smith,
I watched
Bruce
it.
Sutter.
I was watching it.
How exciting was that? And then they poured onto the field. That was the last World Series that I did not attend, and so I was actually there for Game 7 and Game 4. I bought Game 5 in 2006.
Yeah, I was at Game 7.
And then they switched Game 5 and 4. The most stupid thing I've ever seen.
Right.
We bought Game 4 specific 5 because we wanted. They lost one game in Detroit, so they couldn't win it in 4 games. And then they switched the tickets. Oh, I'll never forget it. But I won't trade it. Say, all right, let's switch it up and play it again. No, we'll take what we got. But Game 7, I was invited by then. 2011, the Cardinal Cowboy thing had built up, and I had people coming to me saying, "I've got an extra ticket for the World Series. Would you like to go?" And I'm like. Absolutely.
Yeah, buddy
So
took me. He
I went
just
to Game
surprised
6.
me. I was at work getting ready to start a whole banquet, a whole wedding reception, and he just showed up and he's like, "I got a ticket
We're
to the
going to
World
the-
Series. Do you want to go?" And I was
Nice.
like, "Yes." My dad was so jealous. He was sitting. My dad was my door guy also. He didn't need a job. He retired from Boeing, but he was my door guy, and so. We would go to games constantly. He loved Cardinal baseball, so we would go all the time. But that was just when he showed up with that ticket, I looked at my dad and I was like, and my dad's like, "Get out of here. Are you kidding?" He goes, "If you ain't going, I am." So yeah, that was the end of that. And we went to Game 7. But even funnier, I told Carter, my buddy tried to drag me out of that game like 6 different times. We were literally
What was he-
up out of our seats. because of the person who should have gone to the game with him, the ticket. He felt like he shouldn't be at the game. He should be with them. So he kept trying to leave. And finally, I mean, we literally were up out of our seats. We sat behind home plate. If you look up the KMOX sign and you look up, we were literally right underneath the clock. And we got up 6 different times and walked up to the back like we were leaving. And something would happen and we go back down to the seats. And finally, the last time, I was like, look, man, you can leave if you want. I don't care. I'm not going anywhere. I'll get a ride home. So, and that was just glad things kept happening, because we would have actually walked out of that game. And I'm just, that would have been heartbreaking.
Well, great stuff. And the Cardinals are such an important part of our culture, especially here in St. Louis. And if you talk about it, around other cities around the country, and you just talk a little bit about baseball, everybody goes, man, isn't St. Louis baseball heaven? And sports and opening day is not near the event anywhere else in the MLB except like it is in St. Louis. So we have
just even going to general games. If you've ever been to another stadium, it's amazing how empty the stadiums are. I mean, a lot of times, you can sit anywhere you want. They don't care.
Yeah, and they let you move around as long as you're not taking somebody's seat. And if somebody does ask you to get up, I've seen it happen to other people.
Oh, yeah.
Not my seats, of course, but
right.
and I've even had ushers look at me and be like, "Come on down, Cowboy. These seats are empty."
Right.
And they appreciate what we do. We bring a lot of excitement to the game, and the Cardinal ownership knows very well what I do, and the fans, most all of them appreciate it. There's always somebody out there who might be a Cubs fan,
oh yeah,
and whatever it is. But when and for me, it's a matter
just
of
a hater.
It's just a hater.
There's haters out there.
Well, if you don't have haters, then
about
you're
it.
not you haven't made it yet.
Absolutely.
You have not made any mark yet if you don't have haters. Because that's just the nature of people. If they're doing something positive and helping people, there's still somebody going to hate it because they're not getting the attention.
Try running for office.
Yeah, and that's just.
I had a lot of haters.
I had a few people say, "Carter, how do you deal with a couple of things that they saw going on?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me, man? I'm waiting until I get some real national stuff where people are saying things on a large level because they hate and they're jealous and whatever. And that's just the way humans are. You got to deal with that.
Yes.
But it's 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 1,000. Doesn't matter what it is. They will come at you. So when you think of a stadium of 33,000 people, there's going to be a couple people there.
Yeah.
But that's just life. And if you're not getting that, then you're not even a blip on the radar unless you're getting some of that. But there's a lot more positive and the good influence and the things you get to impact people. And once people understand the story, I talk to people all the time like, no, I didn't know you did this because you want to encourage people to be part of sports and to enjoy the Cardinals and the positivity that comes out of that because of what you overcame with a coma and everything you went through. And I was like, yeah, that's what it's really all about. And we're all going to go through difficult situations in our life. And it's a matter of the quote I use all the time, another one from my dad, if you think you can or if you think you can't, you are correct, right? And it's not the error that kills you. It's not the error that causes the game to be lost. It's how you respond to the error. Because there's going to be errors. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be things that don't go your way all life. And that's not living on this planet unless you've got some hurdles to overcome. And it's not, if you let it beat you down and keep you out, then that's what happens. But if you can bounce back, it makes you stronger and helps you realize what you can do.
It does.
So that's what we're about. So let's look forward to some Cardinals going on. Greg, prediction, anything you think? I mean, you made a general prediction the Cardinals will win the World Series. I think you said twice before Trump will be elected. But what do you think they're going to do this year? Not a lot of movement, not a lot of transactions, not a lot of...
I'm not sure we needed a lot of transactions, though. Everybody wants to see the team change over. But from being on so many teams my entire life, including playing rugby in college, I mean, if you start changing things up too much, you actually... it's a detriment to the team spirit, because the best teams are the ones who become friends. That's all there is to it. You're looking out for your buddy. And if you're not looking out for your buddy and you really don't care about him, well, that plays on the field like crazy, But if you care about the person next to you and you really want to win for that person as much as you want to win for yourself, that's what creates the team atmosphere. So I'm okay with keeping a team together. And the Padres are getting a lot of pitchers. That could hurt us, I guess, a little, but I kind of like who the Cardinals are right now. They're a wild card. They're not expected to do anything, and it seems like those years when you're not really expected to do stuff, you tend to do a little better, as long as everybody cares for each other. But I think that's just the team mentality to me.
A couple points there. Joe Hustle, my good buddy, he's a River buddy, but he's also a giant Cardinal fan. He's got a video of himself being interviewed after the Cardinals won the 1982 World Series. I think he's got fame.
Oh, wow. And
he played it for me. I said, I took my camera and recorded it with, and to transfer it over. And I said, I put that somewhere. I need to get that to Joe. But they left Sportsman Park in 1966. So I believe in Busch Stadium in 67. You could Google that. Okay, Google. When did Busch Stadium 2 open originally?
So I have one of the pennants from 1982, signed by everybody. Now it's one of the production ones, but I still have it.
There you go. Okay, Google. When did Busch Stadium 1 open? Because it said 2 and it said 2006, so they're thinking 2 is actually. Now they're saying Sportsman Park was 1902. Okay, Google. When did Busch Stadium open?
Just Google when each Busch Stadium opened.
Yeah, that's right.
And they'll give you all three of them.
Yeah, so now we've got to go, and it's still giving me a. By the way, if I misunderstand, but we'll take Joe's expertise about that and talk a little bit more about what we expect from this year's team. So the big question right now is Yadier Molina, Adam Wainwright.
Yes.
Are those two guys going to be back? Are they going to be back together?
Yes.
How confident are you that they're going to actually work out a deal? Because it's been a few months now that they've had to get this situation remedied, and there's a lot of teams.
It's because we're getting later and later and later, and I think it's just going to happen by fruition. By fruition,
because the Cardinals are known for letting things kind of meld and flow a little bit, and to see what the market bears, and it will end up likely being a situation where they don't get the multi-year contract. Obviously, they may not even be the $10 or $20 million contract like they had seen in the past. But do you believe the Cardinals are going to end up with some kind of a deal that they're going to end up with not one, but both of those two guys?
I think both of them will be back personally
in uniform.
I do.
For the St. Louis Cardinals.
And I just think it would be a true travesty to let Yachty go anywhere right now. I know people are just, he's not producing. He's still got one of the best arms in baseball, and he still keeps the other team honest. And if you don't think defense is part of any game, you're crazy. Defense wins championships. I know you got to have bats to win. You got to have people throwing the ball down the field. But if you don't have a good defense and you can't keep it from scoring on you and those extra bases, look how many times Willie McGee or Vince Coleman stole all those bases and literally stole all those runs. Yachty's an equalizer for that. A lot of people just don't even try to run off of him. And I just think that would be just a real travesty to lose something like that. Especially somebody who's been with us this entire time. We'd all love to see him, retire here, but he's not done. He's too good to be done.
Well, he may have a year or two left, and that would help the Cardinals keep in shape. I mean, he's pushing late 30s. I think if they did another 2-year contract, he'd be into his 40s. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of catchers who make it into their 40s because it's an endearing position. It takes a toll on the body. They say the catcher's equipment are the tools of ignorance, right? And I will admit that I am someone who was the catcher many times because I had the ability to catch the guy who could throw 80 miles an hour in the 7th grade, right. And where the other catchers, they couldn't do that apparently. And they said, Carter, the only guy that can catch Matt Schmitz, because I was also the shortstop and had the good glove. But when Matt Schmitz would pitch, it was fastball, and I had a puffed up hand by the end of the game from catching Matt. But so I wore the tools of ignorance. But the catching position in baseball is second to the pitching. I mean, it's essentially the captain of the team, somebody that's always knows what's going on. The leader of the team, they'll let catchers hit in the low 200s, sometimes high 100s, and still be the starting catcher because they'll sacrifice his offensive abilities to make up for it with a good defense.
Well, I would say the catcher's more the leader than the pitcher. Because the catcher's on the field every day where the pitchers rotate. So I think it's the catcher because the catchers make most of the calls of what pitchers are coming in. They are the general of the field. They see everything. You see Yachty all the time moving people around. You'll see him behind the plate moving. It's funny. So to lose all that knowledge, and to me, age is completely irrelevant. I've always believed this. Age is irrelevant. Now, I say that with, kid gloves, but if you have the ability to perform and you're performing at a good level, what does your age have to do with any of it? That I've never understood that. So age has always been irrelevant to me.
Well, it is a key to any successful team, as we mentioned. I mean, if you're going to have a good team, you've got to have a good catcher. And pitching, I'll never forget playing all my years of baseball, how many times you would see an awesome team that had great quality players, but if they didn't have that ace on the mound, you could put your ace against their ace with not as many good quality ball players and keep up and upset the well-rounded full team that had the whole enchilada. But pitching, and that's where you'd see teams win with Roger Clemens or you go down the list of some of the aces in the history when the Cardinals when they had Carpenter. They put him in there on 3 days rest to go out there for Game 7 in 2011 and pull it off. And so pitching. The argument I saw from one of the articles, I follow Redbird Rants and Viva Redbirds and a bunch of other groups, and I'm commenting right now on some of the groups. Their argument is the Cardinals might have at least a 1 point higher ERA this year and may have the weakest rotation or bullpen or pitching staff in the league. Greg, what are your thoughts there? And is that going to be something that's going to impact them? And how true is that? I seem to think the Cardinals come through anyway many times.
They seem to, because the, whatever you want to call it, the 12th man. I know we're talking football, but baseball. Look, when that stadium, we've all been there. We know what it's like. We get in there and all the crowd starts cheering and yelling, and those players feel that. We know they do. I know I felt it every time I was on the field. When big, giant groups of people came to cheer you on, you felt it, and it made you play different. And I think that's one of the major things with the Cardinals. They know they're coming to perform for a bunch of people every single game. Think about how disheartening it would be to be on, let's take one of those, what are those teams that nobody ever shows up? Milwaukee, not Milwaukee. Well, Milwaukee back in the day before they got good. But, some of these teams, like, you show up every day to play for a handful of people, and you're going to be any more motivated than you were. Yeah, you're getting a salary, but nobody's watching. So you don't try your hardest. But when you have the stadiums packed like we do at the Cardinals, we win a lot because of us. I firmly believe that, and I think a lot of other people in St. Louis believe that too. And that's why we go, and that's why we show up with our red and white shirts on, and that's why we yell really loud and cheer, just so to let those guys know we're here for you. Be here for us. And I think it makes a difference.
Well, there's a lot of people that argue there's players that come to St. Louis because they understand St. Louis is baseball heaven, and they really do support their players. I mean, and there is so much of life, and especially sports, is the psychological perspective, and that is if you think you can and you've got that edge and the adrenaline's pumping, you're going to give a little bit. I mean, how much of sports is a matter of focus, right?
Oh, absolutely.
How much of life, especially sports. But I mean, when you've got a 97-mile-an-hour fastball coming in, and you have to be so laser focused. But if you are not on the absolute pinpoint of your focus on that particular pitch at that instant, you're off by this much. That's a foul ball or a pop-up or a ground ball rather than a home run or a double. And so it's just, if you're incented and you're driven, and the psychological part of sports is, I would argue, use a yogiism here, 90% of the time it happens all the time, right? Or 50% of baseball is 100% mental. And you get into some of these yogiisms, but man, if you're not in it and you don't have that support, to have that in baseball, I guess we would say the 10th man, right? You got 9 guys in the field, but in football it's the 12th. But it literally gives that edge to where you want to be there. You've got fans going, and I have had David Freese came up to me. He's a friend of mine, and we talked to him. And one of my good friends was his roommate, and he said, and when they were playing college ball together, and he said, he came up to his car. I was fortunate to be invited to the birthday party for my buddy, and Dave was there, and I said hi to him. I didn't want to bother him. People were coming around, and just kind of left him alone, but hanging out. And I said, Dave, it was great to see you, man. Thanks. And he goes, man, Cowboy, come here. I got to tell you something. I go, yeah, what's that? He goes, keep doing what you're doing. He says, do you know you're the most photographed person in the park, in the stadium? I said, well, I don't know. There's this guy, Albert Pujols, who had a lot of photos of him. He says, keep doing what you're doing. The players love what you do. And I was like, wow, I didn't think, because I stay away. I don't want to cause any jinx. I don't want to cause any distraction with regard to the players and getting into, and I've had buddies on the team that I talked to, and I'd hang out with them a little bit after the games, before the games. But you just let them do their thing. When I played, the idea, again, was let them focus and give them as much positive energy as you can, because every little bit at that level, the difference is so small between success and failure, winning and losing, and bouncing back versus getting beaten, never coming back around. I mean, how many times did we see, we talked about this earlier, if you think you can or if you think you can't, you are correct, but it's not the error. That came from the phrase based on baseball, not the error in life, but the error in the game, right? And if it's how do you respond to that error? And how many times did we see the Cubs, I mean, the Bartman situation, where literally there's your own fan reaching over to interfere with a ball that Moises Alou was about to catch for the second or third out that would have put them into the World Series or whatever the situation was. And I just remember Moises Alou pounding, jumping up and down, and then the Cubs fell apart after that and lost. But that Bartman didn't keep them from going to the World Series. It interfered. It was a play that could have helped the team, but there was another play after that and another play after that, and it made a difference. The Cardinals in the 1985 World Series against the Royals, they talk about the Don Dinkinger bad call. And yes, it was a bad call, and if they'd had replay, that would have been overturned. Right. But that's not the way it was. But the Cardinals dropped a pop-up in foul territory after that. They had numerous errors, one after another, at that same time. So it was not the one error that ended their season. It was the response to that error that ultimately caused it. And such is life, and that's what we talk about.
Because we see it happen in games all the time. So that happens all the time. And one play changes the game. One play, whether good or bad.
It's called momentum, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to create momentum in your athletic, sports endeavors, and you need to create momentum in life as well. And so much of life, that's why I say people think sports is kind of ridiculous. And why do you get so involved in sports? Because sports is what gives us the fuel to wake up sometimes, to just see, to escape, to get away, but to also deal with things in a way that it's not the end of your life. It's not the end of the job. It's not the end of your promotion. It's just an event where you get to kind of observe, participate a little bit, enjoy, but also learn and feel and realize and partake. And so I just think sports is an incredible part of our culture here in America, and it helps to drive everything. So Cardinals 2021, Waino, Yachty, you think they're going to get them both? Pitching staff, are we going to get Wong? Somebody tell me, they did not pick up his contract. Has he signed somewhere else? I had not heard that. I've been taking a little time off here. What is our infield going to be? Who's going to be? I mean, you've got Goldie still at first. You got DeYoung at short. Who's going to be second? Who's going to be third? What's our outfield going to look like? Are they going to trade away a couple of the extra outfielders we got to get some more pop in the outfield?
I think we'll trade a couple of them just for I think we might need one more pitcher.
And ultimately, I think we might need to pull in another ace. We've got Mikolas and you just go down our pitching. Our starting pitching is in decent shape.
Exactly.
And if Waino,
is that terrible?
And if Waino can come back and give us one more year, I thought he was done 2 or 3 years ago.
We all thought he was done.
but he keeps putting it out there, man. And that breaking ball. It does create quite a bit of tear on your arm, but not as much as throwing that fastball.
But it's pretty looking, man, when he throws that thing.
I'll never forget. Who recalls 2006? Who closed that out for the Cardinals?
I don't know. I'm not good at baseball.
Adam Wainwright had just come to the team. He was a rookie, and they brought him up, and he'd been kind of a spot starter. I think he'd been mainly middle relief, but he took over the closing role in 2006. So he threw that big old hanging.
Oh no, I do. That's right. He did. Yeah, he was the closer.
And the catcher there was Yadier Molina too, who had just taken over from Mike Matheny. So the Cardinals are looking like they're. I mean, I think they have
There's a name from the past.
And Mike's a great guy. He's over coaching Kansas City now. But if you really just study, this is where people always discount the Cardinals because we don't spend a lot of money. We don't have a lot of big name players. But I argue, and I've talked to one of my owner friends, and I say we have a psychological advantage because we've got such a history. And it's kind of ingrained in our culture. We talked about this earlier with the United States and the Chinese culture and the differences. But once that's your mentality, that's what you start with, is that this is what we're going to believe in, or this is what we're going to believe in. Then your motivation, it keeps you focused, it keeps you intrigued, it keeps you endeared. And the Cardinals have built such a culture of that. It goes back to I watched a play written all about the history, Branch Rickey, and the history of the Cardinals farm system. And he essentially...
That's what I was going to bring up, man. It's our farm system,
Well, talk about that.
We don't talk about our farm system enough.
Greg, tell everybody why you think our farm system is such an integral part of what we do.
If anybody's ever been to the ballpark in Springfield, that ballpark's incredible. The Springfield Cardinals, if you haven't got a chance to go to Springfield and go to a game, I highly recommend it. My nephew was the mascot for a while, so yeah. So a beautiful ballpark, and it even goes farther than that. It's the way we indoctrinate the players, bring them into the system. We have great scouts. This is part of the Cardinal organization that just really doesn't get talked about a lot, but we know why we're this good. So the farm system, I think, is one of our key, places that it's where we get our talent. And a lot of the talent we trade away, like Voit. So, but anyway, I can't. That one kills me.
Yeah, well, and the Cardinals do a great job of that, and they've talked about how the Cardinals effectively have given away some of the best talent in the league. Irina Rosa just went down to Tampa and helped lead them to the World Series. They didn't win it, but boy, it was sad to see him light it up down there after he'd just been playing with the Cardinals. Got traded away as if he was kind of a part-time guy. He had only been playing with the big leagues for the Cardinals for a few weeks or a couple of months, I think, by that time. And by the end of the season, didn't have a full year. And then they said, trade bait. We'll get another pitcher. The pitcher we got for him, I think, is still coming up. But he was the up-and-coming pitcher, lefty, I believe, from Tampa. Yeah. But now here we are, and we're in that situation again. Talk about Voit real quick. His agent is from St. Louis. A lot of times the guys get Scott Rosen, or not Rosenboom. Oh, gosh, who's the big agent everybody has? Anyway, he didn't go with him, and he's a local agency that is and he was a guest on the Cowboy Judge show.
Oh, nice.
And talked about what it's like to kind of when you're the agent for an athlete. These athletes, a lot of times you're talking to 21, 22-year-old kids, young men, and the crap they have to deal with and being thrown into the limelight. And talk about a guy who went from an incredible market and kind of getting a chance with the Cardinals, but didn't get too far before they traded him. Well, where'd he go? To New York, right? Where else in the world could you go to have a bigger spotlight on you? Yeah. And he did well up there, and I think last year was on pace to lead the league in a shortened season for home runs. But boy, talking about a guy from St. Louis that's done well, Luke Voit, as the New York Yankees. What do you think about him and some of the other trades we've made, Greg? In our short
trades
history?
are part of the game. That's just but again, I speak about the team mentality again. If you go changing the dynamic of a team, you never know what's going to happen. Now, yes, one player could come in and make everyone else better. That happens. But also losing that one player can have a very negative effect on a team because they are such an inspiration. Yeah, they might not be the best hitter or the best fielder, but they're basically the internal cheerleader. They keep everybody happy, and being happy in sports and being ready. And I just think, love thy neighbor is one of the best things you could ever do in a team sport. And I wrestled too as a kid. That was an individual team sport, I guess you call it, but it was an individual sport. You went up one-on-one against somebody. But these teams, it's a whole different vibe. It's a whole different. I don't know. I take it all from the rugby thing. I played football in high school too and wrestled and all that other stuff. But it's the rugby that really brought me around to what it's like to care for your brother, basically, because it was, no pads. You better be watching out for each other. So that's what I think about that.
Well, and it gets down to back to our St. Louis culture again, and how much we really are endeared to our baseball team and our hockey team, right?
Oh,
and then we got some
absolutely.
Football stuff. The Bandits are the new indoor team in town. The coach,
I can't wait for them.
New coaches in town.
Yeah.
And then we're waiting to get back our Battle Hawks, right?
Yes.
Some Battle Cowboy out there. And football is a very endearing component of our culture here, too. We had the Big Red, and we had the Rams, and now we're hoping to get potentially another NFL team back. And they start talking about moving them from other second-tier, mid-level cities. You're going to have your top New York, Houston, Dallas, L.A. How long did they not have a football team? They used to have two, and then they went down to none. And now the Raiders have moved out of Oakland, but have gone to Vegas. And the Rams are doing okay out, and I still follow the Rams a little bit. They're the ones who offered me a tryout.
Oh, I do. I follow them. I still watch every once in a while.
That was neat to get a tryout offered by the Rams. And they said, we have this guy named Jeff Wilkins, but we heard you kick a 50-some-yard field goal. Would you like a tryout with the Rams? I said, absolutely. So we went through that stuff. That was kind of neat. But, yeah, just to have a football team in as part of our culture in a city is a big accomplishment. So we got some of that back. But I have to throw it back to the Cardinals, man. That's what our city is ingrained in.
But before we do, I want to challenge everybody out there. If you got a phone in front of you, you got a computer in front of you, if that's what you're doing, right now, Google STL Bandits, St. Louis Bandits. You'll find them. They're the new indoor arena football team. Look them up. And if you get the chance, go see a game. All right, now we'll go back.
Yeah, and
I just wanted to push those guys.
No, I know. We know those guys. They're doing a great job.
They're great. They're trying really hard, and anybody that can help them out, man, that awesome people.
Coach Hunt, yep, and they're putting together. I think it's like 17 former NFL guys going to be playing for the team. Guys that are going to be like just out of the league and be right back into the league, and some of them, a lot of people don't understand.
Oh, we had a little meeting in my place one day, and a past Green Bay player walked in. I'm not going to name names, but he walked in, was right there with, and it's all right, man. This is legit. So, yeah.
So Cardinals, if they're going to do it again, it's been since 2011. How many people are a little bit like, man, has it been that long? I can't believe the Cardinals have gone this long without a World Series championship. Now, if you think about it, the Cardinals did take quite a bit of time in getting a championship when their last one was 1982, and then they went 1985 and 1987 where they lost, and then made it into the playoffs a few other times. They had a drought there for quite a while, but it did make it into the World Series again in 2004, got swept by the Red Sox, and a lot of people do. People have heard I did play for the Red Sox. I apologize. I played for the Baldwin Red Sox. We were the number one team in National Blue, the highest level out of the West County League there. But I was the MVP with Lane Pietro. I ran into Lane Pietro. He was our ace pitcher. I was our infielder. RBIs and all that fun stuff. But baseball's a way of life. So throw past the Red Sox now. They've gotten too hot. I don't want to see more of the Red Sox.
Yeah.
We've got the Cardinals this year in a position. I think they're going to make the playoffs, or at least a shot at it. May not win the division. Kind of a weird scramble they had last year with an expanded playoff setup.
Well, that was just weird all the way across sports.
But Mike Schilt, does a great job. Has taken this team. He comes from a background never playing at the professional level, but had gone through the coaching ranks and just got the results as he kept coming up the ranks. And then he said, "We're going to give you the job as the head skipper," and he's done well. He got Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I think he's doing great.
And so now we're in a position where it seems like back to the superior mentality that the Cardinals seem to come about with, to say, we don't need the most expensive players. We don't need the highest rated, the most talented. You talk about the talent level between the number one guy and the number 50 guy. The difference is, I think it's a matter of focus and work ethic, if you really want to get out to it. People talk about Albert Pujols was such an incredible hitter. A lot of people don't know Albert Pujols went to the batting cage dozens of times a week where the other guys didn't. I know people that worked out with him and people that trained with him, and he did that, and that's what's helped him to separate himself. Maybe
not only that, he was a great fielder. People don't talk about his fielding.
He was a Gold Glove fielder, too.
I know.
Yeah.
People don't talk about his fielding abilities. Man, I saw that guy make some plays that just blew me
That's
away.
true. Yeah,
For a big guy, he should not be able to move like that.
Well, and when you get down to it, I think the difference, and Kobe Bryant talked about this, Michael Jordan talked about this, these guys would stay and practice after everybody else had gone home. And that's why I say, when you're at that level, you've got the skills there, then it's a matter of, do you take it to the next level, or you just sit on your $2 million, $10 million, $20 million contract. And a lot of those guys do. But the Cardinals are in position. They don't have a lot of those high-level contracts. Goldie, Waino's coming off of his, Yachty's coming off of his. They've got some room. Carpenter's still got a pretty high-price contract, but they don't have a whole lot of money tied up. And I think they find that they do better. And this is, didn't the Tampa Bay Rays really prove that you can get a lower-priced, lower-ticket team into the playoffs, into the World Series, just because the skill level, you diagnose these guys, you pick off a couple guys that might be those $10 or $20 million guys 2 or 3 years from now, but you get them before they turn out. The Yankees are going to pick them up in a few years. Yeah. But for now, they're the players that can take you to that next level all the way to the championship on a payroll that's a quarter of the Yankees or half of the Cardinals. And maybe the Cardinals are adopting some of that philosophy, because it's a matter of, they have an incredible base. They get over 3 million fans every year, it seems, getting between 30 and 40 and sometimes 45,000 people in the stadium, where they're always number 1, 2, or 3 in the overall attendance average per game. They've got all the pieces in place. Is it best for them to go spend that money, or are they going to get 3 million people without spending that money? Because they've got the coaching, because they've got the farm system. What's your perspective on that, Greg?
They're going to get people come to the game.
Is that the Cardinal strategy?
It's a culture now. So when you get it to be a culture like this, people are coming to the game because it's entertaining. It's worth the money. I think so. I don't think the tickets are that outrageous. Yeah, if you want to sit right behind home plate, you're going to pay for it. But if you're willing to sit anywhere in the stadium, and there's all kinds of opportunities to go to games, and we know they're entertaining. Again, I've been to other ballparks where it's boring. Baseball, I played for a little while, but I'm not a baseball guy. I love watching it. I just didn't play it much. But sometimes baseball is kind of boring. And there's a lot of people that'll say that. So, but not at the Cardinal Stadium. Our games are exciting. They're always exciting. Because even if the team's not performing, there's so much going on around you, you're entertained. And that's basically the point. It's entertainment. Yeah, it's a professional sport, and yeah, we all want to see them do well, but it's entertainment. When it all comes down to it, I buy my ticket to go in to be entertained. And it works. And St. Louis has got it down to a T. So I think they're going to keep getting fans. Now, if we start putting crappy teams on the field, they will lose that culture. There's no doubt about it. It won't last forever. But as long as we're competing and as long as we're getting to the playoffs, and on a semi-regular basis, and as long as we seem like we're a competitive team and it's still entertaining, I don't see anything changing in St. Louis. I think people right now are just fussing and fighting for baseball. I know I want to go to a game as soon as I can, and I know other people do too. So if we can get that back and be able to go to games again, oh my gosh, that would be absolutely incredible for not just baseball, but for everyone. We need to be back. We're people. We need to be around people. We know this. So if we can get back to some sort of semblance of being around people and hanging out with each other and just being acquaintances and friends, and this is what we're all longing for. We'll argue about politics and which team's better than that and all, but that's not, individual relationships are what the world is based on. So the more individual relationships, the more we can come together and meet new people and interact with each other. That's what life's all about, at least in my opinion. Being happy and enjoying other people. That's the key to life.
Well said. Let's talk a little bit about the excitement we have going on right here with the Cardinal Cowboys show. Greg and I say are going to be doing this show on a regular basis. Greg has got a great perspective on life, I believe, also, and kind of we share that. We differ from our political perspective as a matter of our basis kind of stuff, but we believe at our core the same things about this country and the great situation we've got here.
We all got to stick together,
and
this country will not exist.
And we got to learn to get along with people, even if we don't identify and directly agree with everything they say. That's what happens. Like I said, another quote back from my dad. He got into a discussion with his friend that was from the other side of the fence with regard to politics, and security finally came over because they got into such an interesting, and they just looked up at each other and said, "Are you kidding me?" and put their arms around each other and walked away and said,
Right.
"We're good, guys. Have a great day. We're just enjoying talking life and talking politics."
Yeah.
But we'll share with you guys a little bit of the excitement we've got with regard. If you would like to be part of the show as a guest and like to be one of our partners, we're trying to expand what we do to help the community and highlight the leaders in our community. So with that, I'm going to change to the full camera shot here and what's going on with behind me. And let's see if I've got that set. Yeah, I do. And now take a look here if you would. But a lot of people have seen this, and I'll just move over a little bit. But be part of the Cardinal Cowboys show.
I'm actually going to move over a lot.
Yeah, you're fine. That's not even that important.
I just want to make sure it all just kind of gets seen.
The fun here that you can see here is, this is where we built this up. And Greg's personality, we need to get him a fan page. He's got a page out there, but he might make another one for all what we're doing here. But Cardinal Cowboys show, Ann Allred, everybody knows her. She's ranked number one in the news personality scope in the celebrities out of St. Louis. Number two, Claire. Number three, Cardinal Cowboy. This is according to the rankings, how many likes, how many. What your engagement is. My engagement's in the top two, even though I'm third on that list in overall likes. Jasmine Huda, she's awesome. Right next to me, right behind me, Mike Bush, Fred Bird, Kelly Cornett. Kelly. She's a little blocked out there. Steve Savard, who just left the KMOV, but still out there. John Brown is a friend of mine. Corey Stark and Samantha Jones from Channel 4. So great company we've got there. If you'd like us to help to get the word out, I'm watching our stream right now. We've had hundreds and thousands of people now that we've reached with this one stream that's been going on. We've been on for a while tonight. But
It's been a long one.
But we want to share it with some of that excitement. You can see overall, now we're up to one. It's actually, depending how far back you want to go, but within the last year, we're at 1.1 million viewers of our show, 632,000 minutes of our show that we've put together that people have enjoyed. And that's just kind of fun because we like to share the excitement that's within the community. And then the last thing we'll touch on here, I want to show you guys, and Greg, I know you've seen this with me a little bit. This is a study, I'm an internet marketing guy, but we're going to kind of help do this by segment, by sector, by region of the St. Louis area. And that is, in St. Louis, you really do have the St. Louis Metro core, which is downtown St. Louis, and then the parts of the city, there's Central West End. You can consider Clayton part of that, Brentwood. That's one major sector. If you broke St. Louis down into 6 sections, that's the core. St. Charles, huge sector, also region, but still considered part of St. Louis. But it's not just St. Charles. You're talking about St. Charles County. And so you've got O'Fallon and St. Peters and a number of Cottleville, a number of towns within that section. Then you got West County, Chesterfield, Town and Country, Baldwin, Ellisville, those types of towns. South County, you're talking Fenton, Arnold. You get over into Kirkwood. Those are some other good-sized towns in that area. And these all break into similarly sized, populated areas. North County, you're talking Florissant, Bridgeton, other areas up there, and then Metro East, just about everything on the east side of the river, Collinsville, Dupo, Columbia, all those towns. And so we want to just help leaders in each one of those segments of our St. Louis area become partners with the show. So if you know somebody, we're going to focus on the realtor or housing related industries. And so if you see there, we've got realtors, mortgage agents, insurance agent, roofing agent, remodeler, a plumber, electrician, HVAC, somebody does painting, flooring, appliance specialist, fencing, handyman, and furniture are just the 20 different industries that we've got up there. And we're going to put 3 from each region that we're going to say, here's our go-to guy that we recommend for you to get somebody you know you can trust. We're going to vet you. We're going to meet you. A lot of these spots we already know. We're putting together this whole diagram, and you can go to the cardinalcowboy.com. It's going to be cowboypartner.com. Cowboypartner.com. Cardinal Cowboy Partner. But we got cowboypartner.com. It's going to forward you on to our page, which is getting set up right now. cardinalcowboy.com/partner. We have a page there kind of temporarily set up, but it'll end up listing these vendors that we're going to refer to that we prefer that have become partners with us, because we want to highlight those people in our community, those businesses that really make it happen. We want to help the small business owners in our region. Greg, what are your thoughts about this kind of a plan to help our community?
I think it's great, especially what we're coming out of, or hopefully post-COVID. Everybody's going to need a little help. We need to get the word out of who's actually still open, who's doing business, and what they're doing. And it's going to help people. There's no doubt, because getting the word out about business is kind of what it's all about at this point. I know my business needs it. I haven't spoken about what it is yet, but we'll get to all that later. We know it's a banquet center, but that's not what's important right now.
And that's another piece of this too, and that ties into what we're doing. So hope you guys would like to join us. If you'd like more information on this, as we had mentioned in our previous slide, go over to, and there it is. Did I pull it up? Whoops. Go to, I'm going to hit, no, that's not it. Did I escape from it? It looks like I closed it. But where did I put it at? But yeah, just go over to cardinalcowboyshow.com. Cardinalcowboyshow.com will get you that information. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I will put up a quick tab here. There's our actual live stats from the most recent. Okay, that is our slideshow I was looking for. But yeah, there it is. cardinalcowboyshow.com. It wasn't in the mode of getting ready to launch. It was live, so it confused me, these computer things. cardinalcowboyshow.com. Fill out the form on that page and get a hold of us, and we will contact you. I've got somebody helping me with that right now, because we want to help as many small businesses and leaders in our community to get the highlight and the spotlight put on them. And you'll be able to come on and be a guest on our show and share a little bit about what your business does with regard to helping St. Louis. Pretty cool.
I think it's important.
All right.
Businesses are going to need the awareness and help.
Everybody, we appreciate you staying tuned here to the Cardinal Cowboy Show. We look forward to you coming back and joining us. Get a hold of us for anybody you know that deserves to be on the show, and we will bring some of the excitement for them as we continue to do what we do. Greg, Uma, thanks for being on the show again. We're going to keep this as a regular.
There we go.
All right, thanks, everybody.
We'll
Giddy
see
up.
you soon, guys.
All right, giddy up.
This is the Cardinal Cowboy Show.
Giddy up!